Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. It is your boy, Genesis. I am back like I never left. You know what time it is. All right, the time right now is 12:35 p.m. and today's date is the 13th of November 2024. Okay, yes, y'all. We are back. We are back, people. We are back. All right. The title of today's stream is A New Day in America. Hmm. What do I mean by a new day in America, guys? The 46th is having a meeting with the 47th president elect. Okay? And it's a good day. It's absolutely a good day. It's a new beginning for the people, and people have been waiting for this day. One thing I know for sure is 75 million plus Americans have been waiting for this day, because that is exactly the amount of people that voted for the 47th president elect. And just thinking about today and watching the OG, the Don, the legend, the 45th, now the 47th, shake the 46th hand, who happens to be Joe Biden. And he was so humble. This is something I never expected from Trump. I never expected Trump to be so humble in his victory. I don't know, maybe because he is older, or maybe because he he didn't win the 2020 election, or maybe because he's been through a lot and he's just grateful to God. Maybe, I don't know. Look, I don't know. But I never expected Trump to be this humble in his victory. I thought it was going to be, you bet, look, proud, having this smug uh demeanor, but he's not. He is not. He's just being humble. I don't know what is going on with this dude, but he is just being so graceful in his victory. And this is why I believe the next 4 years will be absolutely amazing, tremendous, victorious. Shout out to the legend, the OG, the 45th, now the 47th. Shout out to Corey B. You know what time it is, Corey B. All right, let's get it. All right, so today is the 13th of November, and Trump and Biden are having a meeting today at the White House. Let's take a look at what is going to happen today, man.
Elect and former President.
Thank you very
Donald,
much.
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And looking forward to having like we said, smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
Good.
welcome.
Thank you
Back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate very much a transition that's so smooth. It'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
I mean, just even looking at the body language, right?
Sure. One of the interesting things, President Trump deferring to President Biden there by not answering questions. And
That took
other
some
things,
restraint, it
for
did.
sure, because he's been in that position. We've all been in the Oval with him, and he often liked to answer questions.
I'm sorry, just the imagery, the fire burning, the bust of MLK on one side, JFK on the other. I mean, wow, that is a moment. And these two men have not seen each other, I don't think, since our debate.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think
June
they might have on
27th.
9/11 just
Oh,
briefly.
on 9/11, that's
at
right.
the ceremony
That's right.
briefly.
That's right.
But
But
certainly
I'm not
not
sure
have
they
had
had
a
a
moment to
conversation.
speak
Yeah.
since the debate
Yeah,
that you
and they didn't
moderated,
really
of
speak
course.
to each
Right.
other that whole time. But again, I just want to say what Donald Trump just said. Politics is tough. Transition, we want the transition to be as smooth as it can get.
And he said, I very much appreciate it, to Joe. So these are, in their quiet moments, it'll take a while for us to figure out exactly sort of what is going on here, but also President Biden saying, welcome back, and committing to a smooth transition. And politics is tough is about the understatement, but a perfect way to describe it.
So we cannot underscore enough the transition is smooth, and him basically thanking Joe Biden for that. And what a difference in this moment versus how Donald Trump treated Joe Biden in Joe Biden's win. It's not to this moment ever admitting or conceding to Joe Biden for the 2020 election.
Which also
And
had
never inviting Biden to the White House.
And never
also had an
inviting and not
effect
going to his
on
inauguration.
President Biden's approval rating, and it got his presidency off to an entirely different start. There's no doubt about it.
And I want to bring in our Caitlin Collins, who is there at the White House. And Caitlin, it is really a remarkable moment to see them sitting there together at the White House, exchanging pleasantries, very nice, very cordial. Trump himself talking about the smooth transition and the fact that, they're meeting at a place just feet away from where Donald Trump himself watched on that TV, the January 6th insurrection take place. It is just a remarkable moment.
Yeah, and for that, Biden said that Trump had held a dagger to the throat of democracy on that day in that historic speech that Biden gave on the anniversary of January 6th when he was in office. And to look at that moment there where the two of them are shaking hands, it's important to keep in mind that in 68 days from now, that will be Trump's Oval Office. He will take the oath of office on the steps of the Capitol, and then at noon that day is when the power will be turned over, and Joe Biden will leave the White House and Donald Trump will enter the White House for his second term. And I think, MJ and Kristen, looking at this and this moment, the pleasantries are being exchanged there. Certainly it is a relationship that is broken down between the two of them where, Trump obviously has said horrible things about Biden on the campaign trail, calling him diminished and talking about him at length until he was out of the race. He said much nicer things lately. But really, to think about what this transition is going to look like, they're committing to a smooth one that was not obviously in place 4 years ago. But also the change of power is about to make the White House look a lot different when Trump takes office.
Yeah, this is really the pinnacle moment of the transition. Obviously we're going to continue to see these cabinet picks. We're going to continue to see this rollout of what the staff is going to look like. But this marks the beginning of that peaceful transfer of power. And how Donald Trump handles this and how Joe Biden handles it sets the tone for what it's going to look like. And I heard Jeff saying, and I thought it was interesting, the fact that Donald Trump was deferring to President Joe Biden when it came to answering questions. He was looking at him, seeing what he was going to do. Clearly, he is trying to set this tone, and by saying it's going to be a smooth transition of power, kind of ignoring what happened last time and essentially pretending that they're starting fresh here. But he is trying to set a tone clearly with what he is saying. Obviously, we'll see if he ends up contradicting that. We know that that's often something we see with Donald Trump. But right now, it is clear what he's doing.
Well, yes, that scene was cordial. The brief pleasantries were pleasant, I guess, polite, but I do think it is worth underscoring, the reason that this scene and this image is so striking is because these two men have no relationship to speak of. This is not President George W. Bush welcoming the Obamas to the White House. This is not Bill Clinton welcoming W. Bush to the White House. You look back on those images and the footage, and there is some real warmth there. There is no actual warmth, despite the fire, between those two men. We've talked about the many ways in which President Trump has talked in denigrating ways about President Biden. Biden, too, throughout the course of this campaign, referring to this person as a fascist, as a total threat to the country. And now, on top of that, he is having to say the words, welcome back, to a man who single-handedly actually could completely alter and probably already has altered his political legacy. The fact that he believed that he needed to seek a second term and then was forced out of the race, and then the vice president that he endorsed didn't end up winning. That is going to be sort of the lead sentence probably of anything that is ever written about President Biden. And here they are now just sitting a couple of feet away from each other, and he is having to say the words, welcome back.
Yeah, and those relationships were not always warm between the Clintons and the Bushes, or the Bushes and the Obamas, when that was happening in the moment. Certainly their political views were not aligned. But I think what this moment says, and talking about how cordial it is and how strange that is given what we know they really think about each other, it's because it's a moment that people learn not to take for granted, because 4 years ago it did not happen.
Biden said, "I'm going to make sure you have everything you need. I'm going to be very accommodating." And then Trump, of course, did say thank you. But to your earlier point, that is not a gesture that was extended to Biden.
Yes, and Biden looks like what he is, the adult in that pairing, because he didn't bring up the legitimate grievances that he has left over from 2020. He just accepts it and he moved on. And Trump always says something nice in a situation like this when he is treated very well and praised. But that doesn't mean it has any long-term or even medium-term, and maybe not even short-term effect on him. We all know him. He's been out there since 2015 in a very public role as a candidate for president, and then through his term, and then he's been running ever since he left the first term. So these things are nice, and I think the symbolism is important, and Joe Biden is doing everything he can to make that a smooth transition. But it takes two to tango, and I don't think Donald Trump will be tangoing for very long.
Molly, to that point, I mean, there are questions about whether this second term will be a bit more stable than the first term, or whether it will be turbulent. And I'm curious sort of what your sense is. I mean, we heard Trump there say it's going to be a transition that is so smooth. I think he said it's going to be the smoothest transition there's ever been. That's me paraphrasing. But your thoughts about what we know so far, and whether that appears to be a more sort of disciplined administration, or if we can expect the same as 4 years ago.
Well, it's obviously much more disciplined than 8 years ago. But I think Larry's right. Right now, it's easy for Trump to be disciplined, or at least calm, because he is surrounded by people who are placating him and telling him he's great. And where the rubber hits the road is going to be when something doesn't go his way. How does he react? And we do have a lot of experience with how he tends to behave in that situation. That being said, when he won in 2016, he was very ill prepared, and the people around him did not have much of an organization. We're clearly seeing, the way he's assembling his cabinet, even the way he's approaching these leadership elections that are happening right now on Capitol Hill, is much more organized, much more done with an understanding of the way the government actually works. Some of his picks for the cabinet have been somewhat disruptive. Others have been much more normal. There's still a lot to come in terms of the people that are going to be in his administration. So I think we're all going to be looking at those signs to see what they portend. But at least for now, we are certainly looking at a situation that is far less turbulent than after the 2016 election. But that
Shout out to everybody watching the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. One thing I noticed here is Trump is being gentle and gracious with Joe Biden, and both of them are actually acting like, good guys and good friends. And, we've been together for a long time. This is something we should be doing. I don't know why, but this is what it is. I got to give Trump, the accolades, because in my opinion, Trump is not someone who is actually humble in victory. But for some reason, he's been humble in victory this time. And right now, he is with Joe Biden in Washington, D.C., and they're going to have a press conference today. It is just amazing, man. Let's see what Fox talking about when it comes to both of them.
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President,
Thank you.
Donald, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
Good.
welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. I transition that's so smooth. It'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
So there are a lot of things to gather in those few moments, which is why it's important to see all of them. We hadn't heard from Biden. We took it so quickly. So you've got to see that exchange between two people who really were in quite the epic political battle. Not just 4 years ago in 2020, but fast forward up until June 27th and that debate that basically destroyed Joe Biden's opportunity to stay atop the ticket for the Democratic Party. And when you hear the president-elect say politics is tough, and after that's over, it can be a nice world. We're in a nice world today. Martha, what goes through your mind when you hear that?
Well, first of all, that this is very short.
Right?
They brought in former President Trump. It appears to me that the White House wanted this to be as tight a moment as humanly possible.
Why do you think that is?
Well, gracious invitation, obviously, from Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a career, lifelong politician. These two men could not be more different. Donald Trump has spent his entire life in business, and then he became president and learned the ropes. Joe Biden has been in Washington since he was 28 years old. So these two men, while they are in the same ballpark of age, they are light years apart in so many ways. But I think they wanted this to be tight. Harris, I don't think they wanted to give the incoming president the opportunity to sort of take this moment over, but it was a cordial moment between these two men, and this is what I think America wants to see. I thought, for me, the most sort of poignant moment was when Biden looked at Trump and said, "Welcome back."
Yeah. Bill.
It's quite a moment. I agree with you, Martha. I wrote that down as well. By the way, that fire behind them is ripping. And I don't know. I don't know if the meeting they're about to have will be as warm as that fire between the two men, but we'll find out momentarily. When he met with Barack Obama, the meeting went 90 minutes. Who's to say how long this goes? I thought what Jake Sullivan said on CBS on Sunday was kind of interesting. He said, we want to know what his ideas are. I don't think Donald Trump is the kind of guy who wants to show his hand. He's got fires that he wants to put out all over the world.
Literal ones.
Yeah, and some of these cabinet positions, not necessarily cabinet, but the people on his team, I think are very interesting. You know, Fox Digital reported 2 hours ago, they broke the news that there will be a Ukraine envoy to try and settle that matter. And that's going to be massively complicated, by the way.
Do you think that came up or will come up as these two men talk?
I imagine it will. I mean, that would be my guess. But again, I don't think Trump's the kind of guy that wants to show his hand on this. Now, I think with regard to President Biden, he wants Trump to know what they're doing now. And there's a great piece in the Wall Street Journal this morning. It lays out how complicated this is to peel away the different factions, whether it's Putin, whether it's Iran, whether it's the North Koreans with upwards of 10 to 15,000 troops ready to join that battle. And then you've got Zelensky and whether or not he would take a deal. So that's massively complicated. I think the other thing, Stephen Witkoff is a man that most Americans don't know. He's a highly successful and very accomplished individual. He's been really good friends with Donald Trump going back 30 years. He's going to be the Middle East envoy. There is a possibility, you know, as you know, this peace deal that was moving forward between the Saudis and the Israelis that was blown up on October 7th after Hamas, you know, broke through the fence and went into Israel. That has a chance of coming back. And that has a chance of coming back on track. And if it does, that entire region has the potential to change.
So that's so interesting because we have seen reports recently of Jared Kushner coming back into the picture a little bit. And of course, the Abraham Accords were so monumental. It's one of the few areas that Biden didn't touch, actually, in terms of Trump policy. I think he gets where we are in the world. You notice that he's not going to expire, as lack of a better term, the weapons money that we're giving them and the accoutrement that goes with that, actual weapons to Israel. I mean, that calendar has slowed down now under Biden's watch. Martha, what's your quick thought?
Well, I'm just thinking about the Secretary of State spokesperson saying, you know, well, we're not going to basically publicly admonish Israel yet. Right. We're not going to cut off the weapons supply yet. We're watching what happens. We're watching whether whether or not enough aid flows into Gaza. The tone has shifted dramatically with the people who have been appointed. You see, Mike Huckabee will be the ambassador to Israel. This is a team that is very Israel strength focused. We know that Netanyahu and Trump have had at least 3 conversations. This tone has completely changed. My guess, former President Trump loves to interact with people. He loves to talk to people. I think this meeting will be beefy in that response. But I don't think they're going to dig a lot into the future policy.
Well, and Bill made a good point. John, I'll come to you next. I mean, Trump isn't going to show his hand. However, he did a bit when he was running to the American people, to voters. And it may be part and parcel for the support that he got from the Jewish community. You cannot ignore the pickup of Jewish voters in this country, given all of the anti-Semitic behaviors, riots, protests, death threats, actual violence. I mean, it has been quite the last 6 months to a year. So it makes sense for him to make that public during the campaign, what he would do. He was going to reach out, talk with leaders before he became the president in January. Just your thoughts and reporting on that. I know you were in Israel not too long ago.
Yeah, and I think that the appointment of Mike Huckabee, or at least the nomination of Mike Huckabee to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, is a brilliant move on the president's part. Huckabee, very dedicated to Israel. Israel loves Huckabee, and I think that will facilitate a very constructive dialogue between the United States and Israel. Don't forget, as you pointed out, the president vowed that he would end the Ukraine war before he took office. So we'll see what he does on that front. We'll see what his conversations with Vladimir Putin might lead to. This idea of maybe ending the war in the Middle East in a fairly short time period, I think is one that will go over well. A friend of mine lives in Beirut. She told me that all the women in Lebanon are crushing over the choice of Pete Hegseth for defense secretary. Pete, of course, is a very good-looking fella, and they like his military record, but they also think that he will be part of this idea of peace through strength. Let me come back also to the point that I was making earlier, that Harold also alluded to, about the effectiveness of a Trump second term. Don't forget, literally from the moment he took office on January 20th, 2017, he was under siege. He was under siege from Democrats. He was under siege from the media. At every turn, the wolves were at the door. Over the past 4 years, and I never meant to say that he was not working, because he was working every day. He was just out of office. But over the last 4 years, he's really come to realize and identify where the traps are, where the pitfalls are in the presidency, and how to avoid them. And I think just by virtue of the cabinet picks that we have seen so far, Trump learned a lot from his first administration, and I think that he won't be as under siege as he would have been.
Well, we shall see. I mean, Judge Juan Merchan may have something to say about that. I mean, we thought we were going to get a decision this week in the case that has a sentencing date for November 26th. Now, that date moves off the calendar, and we're waiting for November 19th to see if that conviction will stay and there will be sentencing with.
One thing is for sure, Trump is much more experienced than what he was in 2016 or 2017. Now he knows what he's not going to do. He knows what he's going to do. That's why he's moving with speed. He's moving with wild, crazy speed. He's been appointing people, nominating people. He just nominated Pete Hegseth of Fox News to be the defense secretary. So this man is going to be in charge of the Pentagon. People are like, whoa, what is that? Tom Homan as the border czar. He also appointed Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy as DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, yesterday. So it's like he's moving very fast. He doesn't want to wait till he resumes office in January. Okay? This man is about to go down as one of the greatest ever because his comeback is legendary. And the fact that he's being graceful with his win, I didn't think Trump was gonna be like this. I thought it was gonna be, I told y'all I was gonna win, but I guess because he's older, because he just wants to get the job done because there's a lot of work to do. So I am proud of the OG, and I'm proud I voted for him, man. I am so proud I voted for Trump. That's all I can say. Okay.
momentarily. I want to bring in Trey Gowdy, Hugh Hewitt, Josh Kraushaar as we see the plane pull up, and we'll see the stairs arrive momentarily. And then, gentlemen, we will be off and running today. Trey, you're first. How do you view the moment now?
A political resurrection, Bill, just like we were talking about a week ago. It's more than a comeback. I mean, I don't know what kind of plane Grover Cleveland took back to Washington, but you would know. You were around then, but I was not. This is, I mean, it's only been done once before. Now, what's going to happen when he gets to Capitol Hill is it's going to be celebratory. They've been in the wilderness for 4 years, but he's going to remind them, some of you wouldn't be in the room if it weren't for me. And the last time I was president, y'all stalled my agenda. It wasn't John McCain, it was y'all at first, you GOP members of the House, some of you. So you better get with it and let me hit the ground running my first 100 days, or history tells us some of you won't be in the room 2 years from now.
Hugh, would love your historical perspective here.
Well, I worked for Richard Nixon out of college, Dana, and up until this moment, Richard Nixon was the greatest political comeback story in American political history. Now Donald Trump is the greatest political comeback story in American political history because Richard Nixon was never shot in the head. And so I think we are witnessing history today, and it's going to continue to unfold. Very happy with the rapid rollout of the team across all the different silos. More will be coming, no doubt, in short order. Good campaign, great transition, hopefully an extraordinarily successful second term for Donald Trump.
Yeah, we're looking screen right, guys. If we can show the Senate Republicans going into their private meeting behind closed doors. J.D. Vance went in a moment ago. John Thune walked there a moment ago, too. He could emerge as the Senate Majority Leader, but we'll see how that goes with that secret vote. Josh Kraushaar, join the conversation. What is top of mind for you?
Boy, this is a triumphant moment for the president-elect returning to Washington at a moment where he really has the control of the Republican Party. And it's going to be fascinating, as Trey was alluding to see him meet with the House Republican caucus. Trump was frankly is responsible for the expected Republican majority. If you look at states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, some of the big wins by House Republicans in those states, they won because of Trump's coattails. There are other Republican lawmakers that got elected in this year because of Donald Trump. So this is going to be a much more united party, but it's also going to be a very narrow majority for the Republicans. So unity is going to be the name of the game. This is going to be a more unified party, but there's no margin for error for House Republicans. And on the Senate side, it's going to be fascinating to see who emerges as the Senate Republican leader. I know there are a lot of supporters of Donald Trump that like Rick Scott and his more grassroots. He's been very closely tied to the MAGA grassroots, but I think John Thune is probably the favorite, and it'll be interesting to see what Trump has to say about all three Senate Republicans.
Trey, could you talk a little bit about teamwork and the leadership from the White House and how that could help Republicans work together as a team? You know, like once you have a little bit of success and you show that you can work together as a team, it can sometimes then propel more success.
Yes, Dana, you put your finger on it. Momentum. The momentum was lost in 2016 or 2017 when he came in. Remember, all the talk was repeal and replace Obamacare, and it was actually the Freedom Caucus that voted down that first attempt, and all the momentum was lost. You've got the debt ceiling coming up, you've got budget reconciliation, you've got the border, which you better address because you ran on it. Now, the good news is the House has already passed a border and immigration bill. But what Trump needs to do is say, look, because some of the worst offenders in the House are his biggest supporters. He's going to say, you leave Mike Johnson alone. Do not do to him what you did to Kevin McCarthy. Quit these internecine fights. We have a very short window of time to do what we promised to do. And if we don't do it, we won't be back together again. But some of his closest supporters, Dana, they're the problem children in the House. So he can talk to them in a way that other Republicans cannot.
Yeah, Hugh, I was thinking with Carl about a half an hour ago about what Trump learned from the first time around and whether or not they can make him more experienced and a better commander-in-chief and perhaps maybe a better manager of the U.S. government along the way. He had a noticeable disdain for the intelligence community the first time around. I don't know how much you've thought about that going into a second term now, 4 years removed, but what comes to mind, do you think, when you look at some of the appointments and maybe how he's carving his way through that part of the U.S. government?
First thing that comes to mind, Bill, is he's not going to sit down with the equivalent to Jim Comey, Jim Clapper, and John Brennan and get ambushed again, which destroyed a lot of the momentum in the first term and led to the Mueller investigation and the Russia stuff. I think he has done, I got to disclose, my son works for Mike Waltz, so I've got to put that on the table whenever I talk about this. By bringing Waltz into the NSA job, National Security Advisor job, by bringing J.D. Vance into the vice presidency, he has pipelines right back to the Senate and to the House, which are effective. They're very, very well-respected members of those bodies. J.D. Vance is in the leadership vote this morning. Mike Waltz was in the leadership vote this morning. His whole team, including Pete Hegseth, and I hope we get to that because I've got smoke coming out of my ears listening to some of these elite snobs in the Beltway saying Pete Hegseth can't be the Department of Defense Secretary.
Let me just pause there for a moment because President-elect Trump is descending the stairs from his plane and returning to Washington, D.C., triumphant in his victory. And we'll see. He's going to hit the ground here in a moment, and then he's off to the races.
Appropriate color for the tie today, I would say, red, white, and blue, as he comes down the stairs. And then with the salute, we'll head to Capitol Hill to meet with House Republicans. And we believe he'll be there for about 30 minutes and make his way to the White House, and we'll track all of it. Go ahead, Hugh, and finish your thought.
I'm just going to say the personal satisfaction here has got to be extraordinary. But John Ratcliffe at the CIA and said to be Marco Rubio at State Department, Elise Stefanik is a brilliant person to lead the West and voice America's concerns at the UN. Susie Wiles is liked by, I don't know her very well, talked to her once, liked by everybody. I just think he's put together a top-tier national security team, and I hope the economic team, and I hope Pete Hegseth gets the fair hearing he deserves, because anyone who reads his book, War on Warriors, will know he knows what he's talking about on DOD.
He certainly does, and I've read some. There was some criticism, but there's a lot of support for him too. Also called an inspired choice and generational change. Josh Kroshar, can you talk a little bit about the runway for President Trump in order to try to get something done for the economy, which was the #1 issue for voters?
Well, look, Dana, the economic picks, starting with the Treasury Secretary, are going to be critical. And I think if the rollout of the national security team is any indication, this has been a much smoother transition than what we saw back in 2016. He has picked choices that have united both the more traditional conservatives, Marco Rubio expected at State, Stefanik at the UN, Ratcliffe at CIA. These are folks that have united both wings of the Republican Party. They've been announced quickly. I remember that you had a lot of the potential candidates in 2016 coming to Trump Tower, and there was a whole kind of chaotic process back when Trump was first elected. This is a very streamlined process.
Think about how this man must feel right now with everything he was attacked with. The lawsuit, the indictment, the press, home and abroad. It's like he's been attacked in so many different ways, and yet the American people voted for him to be the next president of the United States. He has indictment right now. He has lawsuits hanging around him right now that he still has to settle. The judge isn't even still letting it go right now. And this man is the next president of the United States. He is the 47th. This man is the president-elect. How in the world is that even possible? This man has inspired every single American that is going through anything. If you're going through anything right now and you're watching this man, when I used to say Trump to me is an inspiration, before he even won, before he won the election, I used to say Trump is an inspiration to me. He's been an inspiration to me for I'll say for the past 8-9 years. However, the past 4 years has been so inspiring because this man has been going back to back to back. There was a time Trump's name wasn't even as strong as this, when everybody was trying to pull him down, push him away and everything. And this man still came out on top. Think about how strong you must be. Think about your mental capacity. Think about what you must be thinking about every day to be in this type of mindset, in this type of mind frame as the commander in chief. This man will go down to me as the greatest American politician ever and one of the greatest businessmen to walk in or on American soil. This is just my own opinion. He has inspired a lot of people. He's shown people that it's not about what people say about you. It's not about the fingers people are pointing at you. It's about you personally. What are you going to do about your situation? Are you going to give up or are you going to keep going? A lot of people are going through a lot of things right now, but this man has shown us, especially he's shown me, that no matter what you're going through, Genesis, never give up on yourself, never give up on your dreams, and never give up on God. And God got you because he has the final say. God has the final say, people. Never give up on yourself. This man has inspired me. That's all I can say. I am glad I voted 40-47. Whew.
Okay, now we've had this happen, and this is big news. Who will control Republicans in a brand new U.S. Senate, 119th, as it gets underway for Congress in January? Who will be the leader to succeed Mitch McConnell, forgive me. I want to go to senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram. Just moments ago, you had a first vote. There were 3 men. Now it's down to 1. We have a leader. Tell us about it.
Yes, we have a new leader in the United States Senate. It is John Thune, the Republican from South Dakota. He won on the second ballot. There were 2 ballots here taken. On the first ballot, this was the breakdown. It was John Thune got 23, John Cornyn from Texas got 15, and Rick Scott got 13. But it's not first past the post. You have to have an outright majority of those casting ballots. There are 53 Republicans voting in this leadership election here, so you had to get 27. Now, I've asked for a vote total here. How many John Thune won by, we don't know. But that second ballot was between Thune and Cornyn, and John Thune has prevailed. It's interesting about John Thune. You know, he came to the Senate in 2004, and he beat another leader in the Senate, Tom Daschle. Tom Daschle had been the minority leader and the majority leader, and it was John Thune, who had served in the House previously, who beat Tom Daschle in 2004. So he will be the person working with President-elect Trump and presumably House Speaker Mike Johnson in the new Congress. And it's always hard to kind of divine these leadership elections here, Harris. You know, I always talk about them being particle politics. It's hard to read them because it's decided at the subatomic political level. I was reminded some years ago, my favorite story about a leadership election was in 1994 between Tom Daschle and Chris Dodd. And there was a senator at the time, Ben Nighthorse Campbell from Colorado, who was a Native American, who switched parties later on. He was a Democrat and became a Republican, but Tom Daschle won by 1 vote. Now, who do you think that Ben Nighthorse Campbell, a Native American, cast his ballot for? A man who represents the Sioux Nation, Tom Daschle, or Chris Dodd, a Connecticut Yankee? That's why you had leader Daschle. So we'll see if this was a tight race like that. But it always comes down to those very particular votes. And it's oftentimes about relationships. It was generally believed that John Thune had the best relationships among Republican senators. And J.D. Vance, he was in that vote today. We don't know how he voted.
So he did vote.
Well, we don't know that definitively.
Okay.
He came in and I asked him, and you know what the funny thing is here, Harris? We might not know how many of these senators voted because it's a secret ballot.
It's a secret ballot, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, but I know you and I were talking last hour as the first vote was going on and that breaking news was happening. And the big question at that point, or one of them, was whether or not Senator J.D. Vance, who's still in the Senate, he's vice president-elect now, and when he becomes vice president, he'll be the president of the Senate. So we didn't know if he would vote. We still don't know that. So you cleared that question up, at least for now. We'll wait for the answer. Chad Pergram, great on the Hill today. Thank you. And thanks for the particle politics. I like that. Very
the subatomic level of politics.
I can't say all of that today. I'm kidding. Good to see you. All right. So, Kayleigh, you and I were talking right before this began, and I feel like we get like seconds to all talk to each other, right?
Yes.
A lot going on. What Chad just pointed out about relationships for Senator Thune. That comes into play with something like this. You had some thoughts on the differences between these candidates.
This is a big deal. Look, Rick Scott, who lost on the first ballot, I remember him being on Air Force One. He definitely was more of the so-called MAGA choice, maybe more in line with the President-elect Trump. Thune, there was some acrimony between Trump and Thune over the years. The hatchet was buried. Thune went to Mar-a-Lago with his wife, and they made up. And he said, we have an understanding. So Thune had an understanding with Trump. The hatchet has been buried. And what I know is this. Thune is about to walk into a leadership structure that includes Mike Johnson and Trump. He's the third to come on board. Mike Johnson told me they have a well-designed playbook and they are prepared to execute with precision. So what Thune is walking into is something that has been prepared over the last few months by the House Speaker Mike Johnson, who has the support of President Trump, and by President Trump. So he is walking into something that has been prepared.
So I was questioning this as this was coming together, and you hit the nail on the head. I said there is something happening in the House that informs what we're seeing today in the U.S. Senate as they vote for leadership. And you just told us what that would be. Look, it looks like Republicans will take back the House. It does. It does not look like they'll have much wiggle room. So you need somebody to have laid out a plan like Speaker Johnson if he's going to retain that role. And so that conceivably had maybe a part with the relationship that he would have with who won in the Senate.
So a 3-seat majority in the Senate is massive, right? You get to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
A 3-seat majority in the House is like razor thin. Remember, just again in the House, just to go there, you have people who think legislation is too liberal. Some say it's too conservative, and to get all of them on the same page to vote becomes really, really challenging. So again, I think Speaker Johnson has done a really good job of herding the cats in the same direction. But they're all going to have, the House and the Senate are going to have to be on the same page because it is tight majorities. If you want to pass the America First agenda, no one can leave the ship. And it takes strong leaders to do that. And again, Jonathan, the Senate is what we do in middle school. It is who is the most popular for student president.
Oh, I hope it's not like that.
But it goes. It's human nature. This is relationships, and right. Who do you like, and who can help you get your agenda passed, help you pass your bills?
Okay.
And John Thune has done a lot of that. And again, I think Rick Scott is probably the most conservative. But again, that interpersonal relationship truly matters in the institution.
So you were watching this on election night, Sandra. What does that tell us about the makeup of the Senate if a Rick Scott, who we know is more conservative, and would carry that banner, and who had heard recently from the president? I mean, the president-elect did not weigh in today. What does that tell us about who's in the Senate for Republicans?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to point out that Elon Musk did step in while Donald Trump stayed on the sidelines. Musk stepped in on Sunday and said, vote for Rick Scott. So we know where some of his closest allies stood in this race. Thune had been urging him, for obvious reasons all along, to stay on the sidelines. He did, and that obviously benefited Thune. We're seeing what is happening in this moment. Look, I think the most important thing to point out right now is there is some wiggle room in there, but there are huge tasks that are going to come before the Senate. When you look at the promises that were made during this White House campaign, and you look at the changes the American people voted for, you're talking about massive legislation that's going to come before these lawmakers. I mean, you're talking about immigration, you're talking about tax cuts, you are talking about huge, enormous changes that they are going to have to deal with. So the question is Thune the guy? People are probably thinking Rick Scott was probably somebody that would carry out some of Donald Trump's closest plans. Perhaps, Kayla, you're going to weigh in on that. But John Thune's been in there for a while, and he obviously managed his campaign for this quite well.
Well, I'll tell you what he said on the 6th. Thune released a statement, and I think that's really telling that he was excited about this administration. He said, the incoming Senate Republican majority will work hand in hand with the Trump-Vance administration to lower costs for families, secure our southern border, and renew America's energy dominance. And then he goes on to say, the work begins now. And that was the day after the election. So I think coming out and acknowledging perhaps that despite, a difference in opinion in the past, he came out immediately with, I'm here, I'm ready, put me in, and this will be seamless. And I also point to the benefit of President Trump having selected J.D. Vance as his vice president, because this is a senator. So when you talk about the relationships and import of such, and that's what he's there for in part, right? Is that the vice president has those relationships with the Senate. And so if there is any friction, if the wrong guy won, according to some, that's what J.D. Vance is there for, to come and massage those relationships and say, hey guys, let's all work together as a machine. I personally have no doubt that this will be an effective machine.
J.D. Vance is the break. He's the tiebreaker. He's going to do what Kamala Harris was talking about all through the end of her
Republicans
campaign.
have 53 votes, though, now.
Right.
You don't need the tiebreaker, right?
You don't.
He's got some room.
But there is a difference between a Senator Thune and a Senator Rick Scott, or maybe it doesn't matter.
But I think it does matter. But also, when you want to move your nominees through the Senate, you need approval, right? Who can manage the institution best? And the senators themselves thought it was John Thune. That's where the vote went. And again, you don't want any bumps in the road. Liberals, some of the nominees we're probably going to talk about later, don't like some of Trump's nominees. And it's John Thune's job now to make sure that all Republicans are on board, get them confirmed, and get the agenda.
Emily just brought up energy legislation as well. I mean, you talk about what a huge part of this administration that is going to be. John Thune from South Dakota might be the guy.
A lot about energy. You're right. Martha McCallum, anchor and executive editor for The Story. We were together last hour as the first vote failed for Senator Rick Scott. Then there were two Johns left, if you will, Cornyn and Thune, and now we know the winner is Senator Thune. Your first thoughts?
So John Thune obviously is very well liked in the Senate. He has had his eye on this spot since McConnell announced that he would not return to the leadership position. He is a longtime senator from South Dakota. But I think that the wind is around reform. This is very clear when you look at what the president-elect has in mind in terms of energy, in terms of the border, in terms of continuing the Trump tax cuts, in terms of immigration issues in this country and energy, as you all were just saying. I do not anticipate that John Thune is going to want to stand in the way of the reform that is seen and envisioned by President Trump. The message that Trump gave to the congressional side in his meeting this morning with Mike Johnson, get to it and unify. He knows the significance of these first 100 days. Last time, in 2016, it took them 80 days of the 100 days to get their nominations through this process. It was long and laborious. They don't want to see that this time. They have a very unique opportunity with 53 senators in the Senate chamber, and I don't see John Thune standing in the way of this agenda.
Well, Martha, I know you're with us for this hour. There's so much going on. So, look, there are two doors that we're watching as all of us sit here, and Martha joins us, too. We're waiting for Senate Republicans to speak. So, coming out that door with microphones, we're waiting for that to happen. Perhaps we might even hear from Senator Thune, who just won leadership of the U.S. Senate. We're also waiting outside the portico at the White House. Team might put up a split screen now. Peter Doocy was in the driveway awaiting to see if President-elect Donald Trump might come out and talk about what went on in the meeting with President Biden. So we've got two focal points today, and we will stay on that. Kayleigh, I want to come back to you on something, though, just in terms of the president-elect getting involved or not getting involved. In the beginning, we knew who we wanted, right? Then he got quiet. If you have too many votes, it gets muddied, as Martha just pointed out. Like, you need a crisp decision. Do you think we got what we were looking for today in terms of that, and what does that mean to Trump in your estimation?
Look, I have no doubt that the allies around Trump probably wanted Rick Scott. It was just someone who, in his gut, viscerally supports the agenda. President Trump, however, was very wise not to weigh in on this. The Senate is an interesting institution. They have a degree of independence. They don't necessarily see themselves beholden to a president, even if it's a president within their own party. That's why they have secret ballots. They're very much an institution that has this degree of independence. So I think not weighing in was smart politically. The last thing President Trump would want to do would be endorse someone and then go into Washington if they chose a different way with that kind of political loss in the back. So smart not to weigh in, but also wise for him to have met with Thune back in October. He saw the writing on the wall that he needed an ally. He made alliances with all three and is ready to move forward. But the question for Thune will be this. They all indicated an openness to recess appointments, and it's easy to say that on paper. But when push comes to shove, when Trump says, I want that recess appointment, is he going to do it? He should. Trump has a mandate to lead. We will watch closely.
What do you know about Thune that might be able to answer the question that Kayleigh's asking?
Well, first, I think it's important to note that Donald Trump did meet with all three of them. And in those conversations, he probably thought, you know what, all of them are going to carry out the agenda, so I don't have to get involved. If someone is opposed to the agenda or going to be a problem for the agenda, that's when he'd have to be public and make a statement and try to push senators. And by the way, you're right. They're very independent in the Senate. The problem, though, is when you have a mandate from the American people, and you won such a majority with Republicans, and these are Republican senators, it's really hard when you get pressure from the U.S. president who just had that mandate. So it would have been effective, but I think the president thought, why do it? I'm not going to make any enemies here. I'm going to keep them all friends. I don't care who wins because they're all buying into the things that I need in this new administration.
Yeah.
Emily.
Which I think goes back to what you were saying the other day, Kayleigh, which was that the difference between this transition and this next chapter and the prior one is that President-elect Trump can sort of rest assured that everyone is indeed fully in line, fully on his side, and more appropriately, fully recognizes and respects his authority as the duly elected incoming president. So I think he can rest absolutely assured knowing that those alliances have been carved, have been strengthened, have been bolstered, and everyone in the pot gets the assignment, and there's no worry on his part, because that's a sign of a leader that has assembled an appropriate team, right? Is you don't have to micromanage, right, because you know and have faith that will take care of
So,
itself.
Sandra, you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about energy. So about 3 hours ago, we didn't get good news about inflation. It ticked right back up again.
Back up, yeah.
So energy is where, at our all-women town hall and where I know in a lot of different rally speeches, Trump has talked about he would attack that first, make energy cheaper for everybody, which would attack the production, manufacturing, and getting groceries into our hands and try to tackle the prices of things through that. So talk to me about Senator Thune, because if energy is going to be first out of the gate.
That promise hits the core of every business in this country, every consumer in this country. You bring down energy costs and you create a business-friendly environment for all, and that is a friendly environment for all consumers. So that was obviously a winning message in this presidential campaign. John Thune, obviously, he could be masterful with his leadership through energy reform and energy legislation. I think something you have to point out that's a lot different this time around is perhaps personalities matter less this time around with this Donald Trump presidency, because he has so clearly articulated his promises to the American voters. I mean, we know his plans, right? That's what the American voters voted for in this victory. And so if John Thune's the guy, and that was what I was looking up just a minute ago because I wanted to make sure I used his exact words. He's described his relationship with Donald Trump as a working relationship. Okay. So he's not glorifying it or making it something like they're best friends or beyond. This is a working relationship. And that's what he needs right now, because he's set the goals, he's made the promises, now they have to get to work.
Yeah, the word working is key.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to work.
That's what
right now, it is a possibility with the U.S. House. And of course, we haven't called it again here on Fox. We're going with AP. Associated Press is not there yet. But if he has bicameral majority, he's not going to keep that long. We've got another election for congressional members coming up in a couple of years. So he's got to be able to do something pretty quickly.
Yeah. Hey, everyone.
One thing is for sure, Trump has been working behind the scene, in front of the scene for a long, long time. He has been campaigning, doing his rallies, town halls for a long time. He's made relationships with all of these people. Now, he has nobody to oppose him because everybody's on board with his agenda, okay? To make electricity bill affordable, to bring back lower inflation, to end the wars around the world. This is going to be the greatest time, in my opinion. The next 4 years will be one of the greatest time in American history. This is just my opinion, okay? Also, of course, the former First Lady, Melania Trump, declined to meet with Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, who is Joe Biden's wife. She said, no, I'm not going to meet with you. What happened? She finally opened up. Let's see.
Some will go
Okay,
to
just wanted to get a sense of the messes there on education. That's inside the White House. Outside on the North Lawn is Rich Edson to bring us the flavor and what he's picking up right now. We should see the president there in 45 minutes. Rich, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. Well, right there, what you're seeing right now is the East Room of the White House. It's not that far of a walk over to the Oval Office, and that's where the action really is going to happen in a little bit this morning. We're still trying to figure out specifics on the schedule here, but a traditional meeting between the incoming and outgoing presidents when President-elect Trump get back here to the White House and meet with President Biden in the Oval Office later today. You know, I got to tell you, you haven't seen a media footprint at the White House here really like this since President Trump left office back in 2021. This is going to be his first time back at the White House since then. Trump never extended Biden that invite in 2020. The White House refuses to say what Biden wants to discuss, but we have gotten some hints from Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan. He told CBS that the president will likely urge Trump not to abandon Ukraine because doing so means more instability in Europe. Beyond specifics, the White House is really playing up this idea of the images that we're going to see in the Oval Office, a peaceful transfer of power. The two presidents sitting together before their conversation and really highlighting that the United States is still, through a popular election, can recognize elections and transfer the presidency from one party to the next. You saw the First Lady Jill Biden there. It is now confirmed that she will not have a meeting today, though she reached out to Melania Trump for the invite. Incoming First Lady Melania Trump will not be meeting. She tweeted, or her office tweeted this morning, Mrs. Trump will not be attending today's meeting at the White House. Her husband's return to the Oval Office to commence the transition process is encouraging, and she wishes him great success. In this instance, several unnamed sources in the media continue to provide false, misleading, and inaccurate information. Be discerning with your source of news. There has been some reporting out there, notably from the New York Post, that the reasoning behind Melania Trump not coming to the White House today is because of that summer 2022 raid on Mar-a-Lago, the Trump's residence. In the documents case, the White House maintained at the time that the president was not informed in the decision-making to raid Mar-a-Lago, but Melania Trump, or her office there, speaking for the first time about her decision not to attend today's meeting. Still waiting for some scheduling here. The president-elect is not too far away, close to the Capitol. Will make the trip up to the White House. Will make a similar trip on January 20th. But here, meeting with President Biden just a short while.
Good
Bill,
deal.
Dana,
Thank you, Rich. Going to be an interesting read.
I mean, they're saying it's not because of the raid, the Mar-a-Lago raid. However, I mean, if you were married to someone who, officials just came into his house to raid everything, to take some things, just because, right? It's like, yo, I'm not gonna be going for no invite. I'm not going to go, okay? But it is what it is, and she's decided not to meet with Jill Biden, and it's a choice, okay? It is her choice, all right? And this is the definition of, even if you're married to someone, they don't have to agree with you on everything. Just because she's married to Donald Trump doesn't mean she has to go to the White House because, the president and the first lady said, we want to meet with the president-elect and the first lady. Well, first lady, you know what I mean? So it's like, no. Double tap your screen twice to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is your boy Genesis. Also, some loyalists, some people are saying, well, Trump loyalists, based on J6 rioters that were jailed, will be pardoned, according to CNN. I knew this was going to be an issue. Let's see what they had to say.
Donald Trump's most loyal supporters expect him to honor one of his campaign promises to pardon January 6th rioters, but that could upset some voters and even some of Trump's allies. CNN senior correspondent Donnie O'Sullivan with the latest.
Today was amazing. Woke up with the president of the United States, the rightful president, back in his spot, and today, after 828 days, we're going to pop some champagne and raise a glass to President Trump.
This is the mother of Ashley Babbitt, the rioter who was shot and killed by Capitol Police on January 6.
Mama Mickey, we love you, honey. And we are so grateful for you bringing this freedom family together.
It's the night after the election. Trump supporters have gathered here, as they have every night for the last 800 nights, outside the Washington, D.C. jail.
How did you feel when Trump won last night?
I knew that meant freedom for our guys. And I was overwhelmed, thankful, and I know that God heard our prayers.
Were you emotional?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jan 6 inmates call in to talk to the organizers nightly.
This stressful, barren journey has finally come to an end with the election of our beloved President Donald J. Trump.
I couldn't stop crying last night that you guys are finally gonna get pardoned. You're gonna be set free, and all of this is gonna be behind us.
Trump has repeatedly promised to give pardons to some people serving time for their actions on January 6.
And now we have to continue to put pressure on the president to make that right decision, to fulfill that promise. And I know that he will, but I also know my president understands trust but verify.
One person who certainly hopes to be pardoned is Rachel Powell.
How do you feel when you watch this?
You know, I think I'm more numb when I look at this stuff. It's like surreal to me. I mean, look how angry I look.
I met Rachel back in January of this year, right before she was about to go to prison for crimes she committed at the Capitol on January 6, while protesting what she believed was a stolen election.
Have you ever had a moment where you're like, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Biden actually won the election. Maybe I'm the conspiracy theorist.
No, not at all.
This call is from a federal prison.
Rachel and I stayed in touch throughout the year.
I feel like I just need to be home with my family.
Rachel has 8 children, ranging in ages from 8 to 28, along with 7 grandkids. We spoke to 3 of Rachel's older daughters, Ada, Rebecca, and Savannah.
Wait, this is you and your mom?
Yes.
When was this taken?
Yeah, this is in the prison. This is Ada, our mom. This is Gideon, me, and my husband.
The only thing I could think of when I heard that Trump won the election was that my mom is coming home. She's going to be able to come home now. We're going to have our mom back.
You just know she's freaking out.
She's so excited. She's so happy.
Their mom was found guilty of engaging in physical violence and of destruction of government property for breaking a window at the Capitol with an ice axe.
Do you ever just think, oh, Mom, I wish you didn't go to Washington, D.C. that day?
I feel like that's a pretty normal thought to have when there's so many consequences to the actions, but ultimately she was going to support something she believed in.
Yeah.
And she is our mother, so we support her in whatever she decides to do.
Yeah.
I don't blame her for going. Kind of wish she had a little, held herself back.
Maybe a little more restraint would have been nice.
Exactly, yeah.
You guys are not of the opinion your mom went to Washington, D.C. chasing a conspiracy theory, chasing a lie?
No.
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 Yeah, she had a strong belief. She wanted to go support it, and we all share her belief that it was definitely stolen in our opinions.
Mm-hmm. You're certain he will pardon your mom?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, he will keep to what he said. He will keep his word. He is going to pardon her.
While we were at Rachel's home, she called from prison.
Oh man, when Trump won, it was amazing. It was, which I knew that that's what the American people wanted, so I had no doubt. But as everybody knows, I believe there was election fraud last time, and so I just wondered, are we going to have a fair election this time? And it appears that we did because Trump got elected.
And do you think he's going to pardon you?
I know he's going to pardon me.
And there is a debate now as to who and how many people Trump should pardon. His former vice president weighing in, saying that he didn't believe the president should pardon anyone who assaulted a police officer on January 6th. But there's a whole movement that's built up around this, John, as you saw people gathering outside the DC jail there, where they have for 800 nights. Some of them even produced this book, a How to Pardon the J6ers, a guide for President Trump. So it's all in here.
This is very, very disturbing, and also this is. She's on video doing all of that stuff. So, and this is what I always tell people: you can support what you believe in, but do not get physical. Okay, don't try to get physical if you are not, if you're not being endangered or something like your family member, because now she's putting the pressure on the president-elect, saying, well, he's going to pardon me. But you are on video, bro. I'm sorry. Okay. I voted for Trump too, but you are on video. I'm sorry, Brody. Anybody who don't agree with me, it's okay. You don't have to agree with everything that I say, okay? It is what it is. But if you're on video doing that, trying to destroy, properties just because you want to prove that you're right or because your opinion should be heard, I don't know, man. And if he doesn't pardon her, she's gonna hate Trump? She's not gonna like him anymore, or what? You were there doing what you were not supposed to be doing, ma'am. Ma'am, you probably need a little, readjustment. Okay, so of course, Trump has said he is trying to weed out the woke. According to Trump, Trump would say the woke generals. Okay, let's hear what he has to say.
What,
Pray tell,
woke?
is woke military, Scott?
Well, I think conservatives and Republicans have long believed that the military has taken on a lot of the worst properties of corporate America and gotten away from the core mission, which is fighting and winning wars and defending the United States. All of the HR properties that have divided this country for the last several years when it comes to promoting, these soldiers are not, cultural guinea pigs. They're soldiers. They're there to fight and win wars and defend America, and that should be the point. And regarding this order, which I don't think we've actually seen, the issue is he's the commander-in-chief. We have a civilian-led military. The generals at the top of the military do need to have the capacity to execute our defense policy and his vision for how we defend this nation. And if they can't do that, then that's a problem. And they should not be trying to substitute their own judgment. So there is some, I think, utility in the commander-in-chief reviewing the people at the top of the military and saying, can we work together? I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I didn't really hear an answer to my question, but go ahead, Nicole.
Let me just say, for one, that the military has long been woke. For instance, the military was the first institution in the United States to integrate. It was one of the first places to have integrated housing, to enforce integrated schools on the base, to actually enforce the fair housing law when people were trying to rent to soldiers and saying if someone were found violating that law, that the military could not allow any soldiers. So the idea that there's something wrong with being woke, when in fact what that means is a military that's trying to reflect a multiracial country that has a lot of different types of people who have to come together and learn how to work together in the national defense. Actually, racial polarization is bad for military strength, and it's been used against this country many times by our adversaries, including in recent elections. So I think this idea that we can purge woke from the military is actually ahistoric, and I also think it's dangerous because while he's saying he's going to purge woke, what he really wants is to purge any generals who might actually stop him from using the military against the American people and in ways that the military is not supposed to be used.
Such as he threatened with General Milley, that he didn't like what General Milley said, and he decided he would like to see General Milley court-martialed because of what he advocates and what he said about President Trump. First of all, the military, we've seen time and again, is the most admired institution in the United States. And not only is it admired, if things that we really criticize, for instance, the Iraq War, it's not the product of the military. It's the product of the President of the United States. Vietnam, disaster. That was not the product of GIs or generals. It was the product of the President of the United States. So the whole idea of the military being corrupted by these generals, in fact, the kind of education, military and historic and diplomacy and warfare that these generals get is probably the most unique education system in our culture
But
today.
I don't understand what you mean by woke. You're talking about racial integration, and I think that makes sense. But is that what you define woke as? I'm curious.
Well, I was referring to the
I don't know, I'm
criticism
referring to what he
of
said.
General Milley.
I think what President Trump and what a lot of Republicans are fearful of is that the core mission of the military, to fight wars and to defend the country, sometimes takes a back seat to trying to overlay social and cultural programming into the military that is commonly found at universities, commonly found in corporate America.
Where's the evidence?
And maybe it's fine for that.
That's the
but
question.
that's what he resists in the federal bureaucracy, specifically in the military.
Is there some truth in that?
That's what he, that's his policy.
That he just wants to control it for himself so he can use it as he pleases, and we're using that term as
name the
woke
woke
for himself.
policies.
What are
I'm
the
gonna
woke
say,
policies that are
That's
used?
the question.
Are you referring to DEI?
What are the policies?
Yeah, I would say he would specifically name DEI.
And how has that harmed?
How is that harmful?
The military prowess. Name something specific.
I think he would probably say, I mean, I don't speak for him, but I think he would probably say that any policy that doesn't prioritize getting the military into a position to fight wars and defend America, anything else that's ancillary to that,
What
or
does
that may be
DEI have to do with that,
or that may be detrimental to that, should be set aside. That's what he believes.
So you have no actually specific
I know you want to
examples.
get in there.
I just want to get more to a core issue, and I feel kind of foolish bringing up history sitting next to the esteemed Carl Bernstein, but I think you would agree that it's not unusual for a president to have deep distrust on his military apparatus at a
Well, MacArthur
right.
and Truman.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
And the article, the Wall Street Journal's article, cites George Marshall's plan where he was plucking out senior officers to replace with junior officers. There is a precedent for the commander-in-chief, and through his ancillaries, to push for a clearing of house. Now, a lot of presidents talk about it. He's the only one who's going to act on it.
The president has the authority to begin with.
Right.
This is a fake to begin with. This is a
Let
show.
me
This is about show trials.
Let me just speak to the elephant in the room.
I would not go that far.
This is about a show trial.
Let me just add one thing here. I think that what everybody's dancing around is when Trump and his allies say, we're going to go after woke in the military. Usually woke is a code name for diversity. Diversity is a code for people of color. There are already not that many people of color in the 3- and 4-star general ranks. So if that is the mandate, to go after people who care about diversity, what do you think is going to be the end result of that?
I don't think that's true.
I just think we should contemplate what is the end result of Trump going after 3- and 4-star generals. There are not that many of them. Not that many of them that are people of color. Anyone who prioritizes diversity in the military is going to be on the chopping block.
I think we're all on our jump to conclusions. Matt's here if you want to talk about office space. I think we haven't seen the order. We don't know what's going to come of this. What we do know is that Donald Trump has said he would like to have generals at the top of the military who see eye to eye with him about our national defense policy and the posture of our armed forces. That's what we know.
We just played the clip where he talked about...
And to jump ahead of that...
We just played the clip, Scott, where he talked about woke 1,000 times. You cannot take that out of the equation. That is a big part of the mandate.
I'm not taking it out of the equation.
And so the question is, what is the concrete consequence of it for a military that is already struggling with adequately promoting people who are already within their ranks, right? And are not making it up to those high ranks?
My assumption is that the consequence will be that the generals who want to execute on the commander-in-chief's vision will be just fine, and the people who just can't see eye to eye with the concept of a civilian or military won't. That's my view.
Military, if you are not waving a Donald Trump flag,
correct.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
short.
If you read the Wall Street Journal article, there are people quoted in there who talk about this.
Well, the chief staff of the Air Force
Yeah.
has cited that this is aimed partly at him and to make an example of him. Now, I don't know that that's the case, but he is someone
C.Q. Brown, who's
who indeed has
a black
spoken
man,
about
by the
his
way.
experience as a black aviator.
Yeah.
And apparently this has pissed off the former president of the United States. And
One of the other
president
reasons
has remarked on it.
We wanted to talk about this is because, I mean, obviously in the postmortems of this election, Nicole, there's a lot of conversation even among Democrats about whether the message, the anti-woke message worked and was the main vehicle, actually, to bring Trump back to the White House, convincing I think he did about as well with white voters this time as he did the last time, but convincing actually more voters of color, particularly Hispanic men and women, to vote for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to see all the postmortems. First argument was this was a vote on economic anxiety. Now it's changed to this being a vote, an anti-woke vote, which we can't even define what that means.
Correct.
When I hear anti-woke, I hear anti-black.
That's all I hear.
And we should also be very clear, as I tweeted about or posted about earlier this week, is that Latino is not a racial group. Latino is a broad category that includes people across the racial spectrum from many different countries, and some of them also self-identify as white. In fact, the majority of Latinos self-identify as white. So it shouldn't be shocking that some of them also are enamored by that message and vote on that message. But my thing is, when we are talking about what is actually woke or anti-woke, the same people who are making that argument are saying the Democrats lost on identity politics. Well, the anti-woke argument is identity politics. It is white identity politics, and that is what Trump was selling, and that's what a lot of people are buying.
And
so we should just be honest about that.
I think we should be honest. I don't think that's out.
Thank you for tuning into the live stream. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. This is what I hear. Being an outsider who came from Africa here, just like Elon Musk was born in South Africa. I was born in Nigeria, and I came here legally, just like Elon Musk came here legally, and I became a United States citizen, just like Elon Musk became a United States citizen, okay? So, what I hear here is beautiful African American women, gorgeous African American women who have worked hard and now have had and are currently living the American dream, and in a country that the 44th president was an African American man, and that is considered the highest office in the land. And yet, this amazing women here that you're watching currently tell us, the viewers, that when you hear someone like Trump say no to woke, he's basically saying he doesn't want African American people. In a country where Ben Carson supports the former president, in a country where, Brian Johnson supports the former president, and yet this same people want to talk about, African American people are not going to be getting the privilege they deserve or the opportunity they deserve. But you are here on national television with the best look that you can get. Look at you. Kamala Harris is supposed to be considered, she's considered a person of color. She was running for Trump. She was running against Trump, rather, to become the United States president. So it's like, it's not about color. It's about performance and action. It's about performance and action. It's not about color. It's not about color. Identity politics is now gone by forever. It's now who can actually perform. Who can perform? If you cannot perform, bye, bro. Nobody cares about your color, your gender. Nobody cares. It's about performance. Can you perform? What have you done? That's all it is. All of this stuff, this is why Trump won in the first place. All these things that they're talking about, this is the reason Trump won in the first place. I just hope they stop talking about stuff like this and they actually talk about, can we actually perform for the American people? They keep talking about this and they're never going to actually win a general election anymore. This is, facts.
Of line for her to say, and Scott, I saw you shake your head. It's not odd for her to say anti-woke sounds like anti-black. It does sound as if it is about a group of people that you do not want in your party, at your top, with your workforce.
Did you see the election results?
Yeah, I did see the election results. But if you think that,
let me ask you a question.
Let me ask you a question. When you say anti-woke, when you say woke, do you think about a certain class of people, a certain group of people outside of yourself? I'm just asking you that question. It sounds like that to me because I am a black woman. I'm speaking from my experience. So I'm asking you from your experience. When you hear anti-woke or woke, does that identify a group of people? That's all I'm asking you, because I'm asking you to help me understand so I know what you're saying.
I tend to think about hyper-liberal people who have a fundamental disregard for, the underpinnings about founding of our country and who want to fundamentally change our society in ways that are not in line with a vast majority of the American citizens. That's what I tend to think about.
Such as what?
And what is the vast majority of American citizens?
I would say the vast majority of American citizens in this case want the military to do one thing: fight and win wars and defend this nation. And I would suspect what they want the commander-in-chief to do is find generals and find leadership for the Pentagon that also agrees with that.
When I hear woke, it represents LGWERTY. Y'all know what I'm talking about because we got to be careful up here, man. That's what it represents. LQWERTY. That's what it represents. That's what, for me, that's what woke represents. Okay. It's not about people of color. It's not about this. It's people who say, I am a cat. I identify as a dog. That's the thing that I consider being woke. Okay. Because that's total BS, in my opinion. Okay, so Larry Summers issues warning on Trump's proposed economic policies. What is going on here?
Larry Summers, the director of the National Economic Council under President Obama and Treasury Secretary under President Clinton. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming in. What's your reaction to this latest report? What should people take from it?
This was about what people expected. It shows that inflation is not where it was a couple of years ago. All kinds of bottlenecks have eased. The Fed has tightened policy. But it also shows that we're not securely at the Fed's 2% inflation target. And so we've learned from the election just how toxic inflation and high prices and high interest rates are to the American people, that causes them great anger, great disillusionment with institutions, creates a dynamic that's very strongly anti-incumbent. And so the lesson that policymakers, both in the executive branch, the president, the secretary of the Treasury, and in the Fed, need to take away from this is that we've got to stay focused on the inflation problem. And frankly, I don't think there's enough focus on the inflation problem. The Fed has been in too much of a hurry to cut interest rates and much too much of a hurry to promise future interest rate cuts. They keep giving signals that they're going to cut them a lot and then having to walk those signals back. That's what's happened in the last 2 or 3 months. And I think the biggest lesson in all of this is for President Trump. If he carries through on what he said during his campaign, there will be an inflation shock significantly greater than the one the country suffered in 2021. He has promised, if you add it all up, more than $10 trillion in tax cuts relative to the current trajectory. He has called into question by politicizing the credibility of the Fed. He said that the dollar needs to go down, not up, raising the price of every imported good. And much more importantly, on the supply side, he's called for pushing up all kinds of prices by putting an across-the-board tariff on, which will raise the price not just of imported goods, but of American goods that use imported goods as an input, also raise the price of goods that have to compete with imports. And look, I think every sensible American thinks we need to do more to secure our border. But if you're talking about deporting millions of people, that is an invitation to labor shortage and bottlenecks. So I hope that he will get the message from this election and adjust his program so that it is not inflationary. And I certainly hope that if his program is inflationary, it will not be accommodated.
One thing is for sure, the American people voted for Trump because they believe he will be the best thing for the economy. He proved it in 2016 to 2020, okay? Or 2017 to 2021. He proved it, okay? Trump is like, he is like a brand. Just like if you want to go to a restaurant, the first thing you think about, oh, fast food. The first thing you think about is McDonald's or Burger King or like Chick-fil-A or, Trump has now become that brand where if you're thinking about a great economy, the first politician you think about is Donald Trump. And this is why he won. Okay. It is what it is. Okay. GOP picks Thune to succeed McConnell as Senate leader. Check it out.
Have breaking news on the Senate Republican leader race. It is John Thune. John Thune of South Dakota. Manu, take it away.
Yeah, the new Senate Majority Leader, Senator John Thune, elected first in 2004, has worked his way up the rungs of Republican leadership, has been a committee chairman, was now the current Republican whip, has now ascended from the number 2 spot to the number 1. He will be the Republican leader, the majority leader, the person who is in charge of setting the agenda on the floor of the Senate. One of the most consequential jobs in Washington. Will have to work with the incoming Republican White House and the incoming Republican president to get this agenda through. Now, this is a vote just wrapped behind closed doors, according to multiple sources, that John Thune edged out John Cornyn on a vote of 29 to 24. Cornyn was a former Republican whip, a 2-time member of the Senate GOP campaign chairman. This campaign had taken shape behind the scenes for about 9 months in the aftermath of Mitch McConnell making that decision not to run again for Republican leader. McConnell has dominated the Senate GOP for 18 years, the longest serving Senate party leader in history, but decided it was time for him to step aside. And now we're seeing a new generation of sorts. John Thune is 63 years old. He has served in the Senate since 2005. His politics are much more in the mainstream of GOP orthodoxy. He'll have to figure out a way to work with Donald Trump. Sometimes they have not always been in line. In fact, in the aftermath of that Access Hollywood tape in 2016, he called on Trump to drop out of the presidential race. In the aftermath of the 2020 election, he thought the election should not be overturned. He criticized Donald Trump as well and supported Tim Scott in the Republican presidential primary. But Thune, over the last several months, has endorsed Donald Trump, has gone on the Trump train of sorts. They've been in frequent communication, I've told, at least he and his team, over the last several months to try to bolster that relationship. And Trump himself decided to stay neutral in this race, perhaps recognizing that even though Thune may not be in line with some of the others who are running, particularly Senator Rick Scott, who lost in the first round of balloting, that decided to stay out because this race could have gone any which way. And oftentimes, Dana, as you know, these races come down to relationships. They come down to commitments they have made to these members, committee assignments that they may promise, fundraising and the like. So there are lots of different reasons for people to vote a certain way. But this momentous decision by the Senate GOP picking John Thune as the next Republican leader, the majority leader, someone who will decide the party's strategy for the years ahead. Dana?
Yeah, really interesting development. Also, Manu, only in the United States Senate is 63 the young generation. Thank you so much for that. Right. Appreciate it. Sure. With me to discuss all of this breaking news, CNN's Jeff Zeleny, The Washington Post's Leanne Caldwell, and CNN's Phil Mattingly. Lucky to have people who have spent a lot of time walking those halls. And the fact that it's Thune, the fact that it is, I'll start with you, Phil Mattingly, that he is somebody who is Mitch McConnell's deputy, and Mitch McConnell kind of notoriously kept his own counsel, and it's not necessarily true that, like, I would call John Thune his protege, but he certainly was somebody who was the number 2 to McConnell for several years. And as Manu just said, not historically a Trump fan all the time.
Look, the Senate Republican Conference of 2024 is very different than the Senate Republican Conference of 2017 when Donald Trump last came to Washington. It is much more MAGA. It is much more Trump acolytes. It is many more people who owe Trump at least some credit for their seats. John Thune's not one of them. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't support Trump. Particularly, you think about the policy issues that Trump wants to focus on in the start of this term. On tax policy, Thune is always a player on tax policy from the 2017 rewrite. On immigration, they're aligned. But he is not an acolyte, and he is not somebody who came up or owes Donald Trump his career or his pathway to Washington. I think what's most telling about this is we all try and get our heads around what Trump's Washington is now and what it will look like in a couple of months. Is secret ballots matter? And the Senate is still the Senate. Now, the Senate is different than 2017 in terms of the makeup of the Senate Republican Conference, but it is still a chamber that appreciates its independence. It is still a place where there are a lot of lawmakers, and you and all of us can name probably 8 to 10 off the top of our heads, even in the Republican Conference, who you get crosswise with them or their committees or their legislative priorities, and there are going to be issues. And I think the import of this moment is where the House, as we saw this morning, is going to be very much I think it was Troy Niels who said, if Donald Trump tells us to jump, we say how high and then keep waiting for more instructions. The Senate is not going to be as compliant necessarily, and it's going to be a really important working relationship to develop in the months ahead.
Jeff, I spoke with a Senate Republican this morning who said that the phone in his office was ringing off the hook with people who were listening to Tucker Carlson and saying, do not vote for the rhinos, John Cornyn or John Thune, because they had deigned to, in some way, shape, or form, certainly more of Thune than Cornyn, criticize Donald Trump at various times over the years. And the fact that John Thune won, and Rick Scott in particular, who was the favorite of Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk and all the people who have been hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, even if it's not Trump himself, only got 13 votes in that secret ballot. What does that tell you?
It's a reminder, as Phil was saying, that the Senate is probably the last place that still has some vestiges of the past where personal relationships matter, where there is more of a sense of a decorum, and people are not following the rules and instructions of what folks online are saying, and it backfired. I was talking to a Republican advisor yesterday who said that his boss was furious at the fact that there was this online sort of outrage telling them who to vote for the majority leader position. John Thune has very deep relationships. This was a vote for John Thune. This was not a vote against Rick Scott. This was a vote for John Thune. And I'm thinking back to a conversation I had with him the Friday before the election. He was in Wisconsin. He had been on the road all week. He was campaigning all week, and obviously they lost that Wisconsin seat. But he has personal relationships with all the people he ran with. But he's probably the least Trumpy of all of them, and he's much more in the mold of Mitch McConnell now. He has a very tough job ahead of him now, dealing with the White House and the very slim Republican majority in the House.
Kind of ironic that he is going to be the Senate Majority Leader. I remember covering the Hill when he, as a House member, ran against the then Senate Democratic leader, Tom Daschle, and beat him. And that was a really big deal. And now he's taken that very job.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. Also, the reason Senator Thune ran for re-election 2 years ago is because of the possibility that he was going to be Senate Republican leader. He did not want to run for re-election. He was worried about Trump's influence in a Republican primary. And so this is good news for John Thune. Personally, I'm sure he's happy because he did decide to run for re-election and it wasn't for naught. But, you know, senators also remember Rick Scott, and they're still very angry about how he ran the NRSC in 2022. They did not win back the majority, and that's a big reason why Rick Scott is not the most popular senator, despite what the MAGA crowd was thinking. And so I think the most important thing that you said is it was a secret ballot. I am very skeptical that they are going to buck Trump and MAGA on anything that is public. But for now, they don't have to tell anyone their votes.
One, that's critical. And just one other quick thing. Trump stayed out of this. He did not. His minions and supporters and allies and Elon Musk all jumped in and tried to shape this one way or the other. Trump did not. And that, I think, I don't know the rationale, but it shows a level of understanding in terms of where this may have gone, or the fact he might have been on the losing end if he went against Thune. That is a different level of understanding of this place than he had in 2017.
Yeah, I was told this morning he didn't want it to blow up in his face, and he was right.
Shout out to everybody watching the live show. You know what time it is. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. It is your boy, Genesis. So, congratulations to Thune, the new GOP leader. Okay, so Van Jones reacts to Trump Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth is a veteran. He was in the military. He is a veteran. And also, he's a Fox News contributor. So people are like, wait, are you telling me the defense secretary that the president-elect picked is a Fox News contributor and he's supposed to be a leader in the Pentagon? People are very skeptical about it, especially Van Jones. Listen, it says very alarming. This is what Van Jones said.
Fox News host and Army veteran Pete Hegseth has been tapped for defense secretary, and he has a lot of ideas when it comes to the military.
The dumbest phrase
on planet Earth in the military is our diversity, is our strength. Well, first of all, you got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever, that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit has got to go. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. We should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. So there aren't enough lesbians in San Francisco to man the 82nd Airborne. Mm-hmm. And in trying to cater to that, they lost the boys from Tennessee and Kentucky and Oklahoma. The traditional dudes who did it because they loved their country, or they wanted the adventure, or they, wanted to try tough things, or they need an up and out of their community, whatever it is. But we let in TikTok where they can trans our kids and they don't trans their kids.
A lot to discuss with our next guests, CNN senior political commentators Van Jones and David Urban. Van, to you first. We just heard from the man who's been nominated to run the Pentagon. What do you make of that? What you just heard?
Well, I think, look, I don't, he looks great. I mean, but he sounds terrible. And I think that if it's not broke, don't fix it. There's this fiction that there's something wrong with America's military. What problem are you trying to solve? We have the most lethal, the most respected, the most feared military in the history of the world. There's not even number two. And so the idea that our military, there's something wrong with it, our generals are terrible, this is a fiction. And so when you start trying to solve non-existent problems with the best fighting force in the world, you actually create problems. And I don't think there's any evidence or any data that shows that having.
Thank you for tuning in one more time. Van Jones is saying if it's not broken, don't fix it. Just because you haven't been tested recently doesn't mean you have the most lethal. You are confusing just the perception of the people of the world thinking, yes, we are the most lethal. You haven't been tested recently with this BS y'all got going on, Van Jones. You better be smart, Van.
Having women involved in our military has made our military worse. Where is the evidence of this? This is all fiction. It's all ideology, and it's all quite frightening. And I don't think anybody can defend this choice. This is not somebody who. I mean, he's a Fox News host who used to be in the military. If that's the standard we're going to be going with, I think it's very alarming.
David, is Pete Hegseth qualified to be the Secretary of Defense?
Yeah, listen, so Jim, define, what are the qualifications? Where's the job description? Look, Pete Hegseth's a smart guy, Princeton undergrad, master's from Harvard, served a couple tours downrange, combat's been a veterans advocate for years. I think Pete Hegseth is as qualified as the next guy. Listen, the tape that you ran there, Jim, there's obviously some things in there I disagree with what he's saying. I agree with Van. The United States military is the best and most lethal fighting force in the world. They do incredible amounts of things right, but they do things wrong, and there's room for improvement. Listen, we all sat on this set and we watched the China spy balloon float, fecklessly across the United States, or float across the United States, and our military was kind of, sitting there not knowing what to do. There are
Is that
some
because
issues
of a
with
woke
recruitment.
military? That there was a balloon flying over the country?
No, Jim. But I'm just saying, when Van says we can't, it's going great and best, there's things we can do better. We can improve, right? We can't meet our recruiting goals. We can't meet our retention goals. Something's going on in the military, right? There needs to be reform on acquisition. We can do things much, much better. And there is an impression in America, across a large swath of America, that the military is too woke, that they're worried about Green New Deal rather than fighting wars. The main purpose of the U.S. military is to
David, what
close
is that?
with
I'm
and
sorry,
kill.
what does that mean?
Jim,
what
hold
does
on.
a Green New Deal have
Hold
to
on.
do with the military? No, hold on.
Jim,
You've
here's
been
what it
talking
does.
for 2
Here's
minutes.
what it does. Yeah, here's what it does, Jim. Here's what it does. When the National
It's the most
Security
powerful
Advisor, Mike
military
Waltz,
in
is
the
on.
world.
Right. Yeah, but we
Okay.
shouldn't be worried about. We're talking about green tanks, getting green tanks and things. We should be focused on lethality. What makes the military
can I
the
talk
most
about that?
lethal? That's what we should be focused on.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Let me tell you what's happened is in trying to make sure that our military is more lethal, more efficient. They've wanted to integrate some clean and green and solar and other technologies just to make us more flexible, just to deal with supply lines. If you don't have to worry about oil and you can bring in a different type of technology, integrating technology into our military is a smart thing. But what's happened is that the right-wing media has taken that and makes it seem like our generals are sitting around talking about environmental science. This is military science with new technology.
Former Fox News anchor Pete Hegseth.
First of all, I will tell you guys, the United States has the most lethal force, military force, air force, Navy, Space Force, any force in the world. The United States has the most lethal force on Earth. However, according to research, 71% of young Americans between 17 and 24 years old are ineligible to serve in the military. Okay. 71% of young Americans between 17 and 24 years old are ineligible to serve in the military. Too many BS going on, guys. Too many BS going on, okay? We better be smart. We better be smart. That's what I'm going to tell y'all. We better be smart and wake the up, okay? Because I got to watch my language. We better be smart and wake up, okay?
Is being tapped to run the Pentagon. Hegseth is a decorated Army veteran with an Ivy League education. He's also a conservative firebrand who's pushed conspiracy theories surrounding the January 6th attacks, the COVID pandemic, and more. Listen to a taste of it.
I don't think I've washed my hands for 10 years. Really, I don't really wash my hands ever.
Help me.
But the left is going to attack him for this, saying he's releasing war criminals, he's loosening the rules of engagement. It appears that crazy Nancy Pelosi doesn't want the spotlight to leave. She can't quit impeachment. It's only been 2.5 weeks, and it is premature to declare that Joe Biden is the president-elect. These are not conspiracy theorists motivated just by lies. That's a bunch of nonsense.
They talk in religious terms about January 6th because what they believe was attacked was their cathedral. Who are they praying to? The gods of climate change?
What's happening in Ukraine is important, but it pales in comparison to the crime I see in my streets, to the wokeness I see in my culture.
Ainsley, I have 2 dead roosters. I didn't know how to kill them because I'm not an experienced farmer, so I tried with a shovel and I couldn't get their dead, so I had to use a 9mm.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles.
CNN Chief Media Analyst Brian Stelter joins me now. Brian, our viewers might not be active watchers of Fox News on the weekends, in the mornings when he is on. Given that, can you fill in the blanks on who this guy is?
Those clips really sum it up perfectly. Hegseth is a staunch conservative, an Army veteran, and one of Fox's real homegrown stars. Back on 9/11, he was a student at Princeton, so his worldview was shaped by the Bush-era wars. After college, he maneuvered out of a job at Bear Stearns to get into active combat in Iraq. He earned 2 Bronze Stars. When he came home, he ran a veterans advocacy nonprofit, briefly tried to run for Senate against Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota, but his path to the Pentagon really ran through the Fox and Friends morning show. Trump loved watching Hegseth on the show. He invited Hegseth to dinner at the White House back in 2017. So I can explain this pick in 2 words, Dana: woke military. Hegseth has, rallied and ranted against the Pentagon's adoption of so-called social justice policies. He's argued that woke policies are hurting military recruitment. He came out with a best-selling book titled The War on Warriors earlier this year that was promoted endlessly across Fox. And he said he agreed with Trump when Trump said we need to get the woke generals out of the military.
Yeah.
So clearly Trump was watching and enjoying and appreciating what Hegseth was saying.
Yeah, Brian, I was told the exact same thing by a Trump ally this morning, that this is about one thing and one thing only, and that is woke in the military. And how you define that and how that turns into actual practice, that's a whole different conversation. But I want our viewers to make sure after the show or while you're watching to check out your new piece on CNN.com, because you wrote in part, Quote, nothing in his biography suggests experience leading large organization, as one of his fellow Fox hosts said Tuesday night in a flabbergasted tone. Quote, you're telling me Pete is going to oversee millions of employees? But Hegseth has something else, of course, that is Trump values television star power. Is that what this is? Is he casting? I mean, in addition to the woke issue, which, again, we're going to have to explore and break down that term woke. But beyond that, is this Trump, as the casting director here?
Yeah. The Fox to Trump pipeline is back up and running. Yes, during Trump's first term in office, there were about 20 of these hires, 20 people who traveled from Fox over to the Trump administration. We'll see how many there are this time, right? Tom Homan is the border czar. He left Fox on Monday. Hegseth left Fox on Tuesday. This is all happening very quickly. I mean, literally, Hegseth gave his notice to Fox within the last 48 hours. And it's a head-spinning change for him. He is going to be overseeing a department that has about 3 million employees. He has 7 kids and recently relocated to Tennessee. He is first and foremost a television star, but we know that's what Trump cares about. He watches very carefully. We'll see how much opposition, though, Hegseth faces in the coming weeks, since his selection has caught so many people off guard, even some senators saying they barely know who he is. I remember, Dana, when I was working on a book in 2020 called Hoax, I talked to a lot of sources inside Fox, and they told me that they felt like Hegseth produced his show, hosted Fox and Friends, specifically to appeal to Trump. Hegseth would look at his phone during the commercial breaks to see if Trump had tweeted anything he had said yet. So this relationship, it is many years in the making and very close between Trump and Hegseth.
Talk about an audience of one.
So is this guy trying to say Trump really doesn't care? He only cares that Pete Hegseth is a television star? We're talking about someone who is going to be the defense secretary. And this person is saying that Trump only cares because he is a Fox TV host star. Man, these people. This is why Trump won, guys. This is why Trump won the presidential election. The popular vote and the electoral college vote. This right here is why. Thank you. Let's listen to what Fox has to say about it.
All right, Mark Meredith is live in West Palm Beach, where the former president lives, with the latest on the additions of Trump's transition team. Mark.
Lawrence and friends, good morning to you. The president-elect is expected to get a hero's welcome when he meets with House Republicans a little bit later on today. He's expected to show new support for House Speaker Mike Johnson as he gets ready for another likely term as Speaker. Overnight, Trump also announcing a slew of new people he would like to serve with come for his administration next year. This is video of him getting ready to head to D.C. from within the last hour. Trump getting on his 757 as he makes his way to Washington. Overnight, Trump announcing like Pete Hegseth, an Army veteran, best-selling author, and longtime host here on Fox to lead the Department of Defense. Trump writing, Pete has spent his entire life as a warrior for the troops and for the country. Pete is tough, smart, and a true believer in America first. Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe is Trump's pick for CIA Director. He'd also previously served in Congress and spoken out frequently about the threat China and Iran pose. Trump also calling for Mike Huckabee, the former Baptist minister, Arkansas governor, and TV host, to be his ambassador to Israel. Huckabee says he is honored to serve, writing, "It's been an incredible day as Trump asked me to serve as his ambassador to Israel, a land I've been visiting since 1973 when I was a teenager. It will be a privilege to serve my country and my president in this role." Overnight, Trump also making it official. He wants South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Noem says she is both honored and humbled by the opportunity. But perhaps the biggest headline today is Trump tapping Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter and Tesla, I should say X, not Twitter these days, and Vivek Ramaswamy, the former presidential candidate, to lead an agency that would be tasked with trying to reshape the federal government itself, to cut through bureaucracy, to shrink the size of the federal government. There's still a lot of questions about how this exactly would work, but Trump making it clear he wants these two very high-profile conservatives to play a key role in the second Trump term. Steve Ainsley, Brian Lawrence, back to you guys.
And Mark, this department that they would head up, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, it doesn't exist right now. So that presumably somebody would have to hire staff unless Elon Musk uses some of the, his Tesla geniuses or some of those guys in the back room to try to do the calculations about where they should make the cuts.
You know, this is interesting. Some people were kind of saying this is the idea of a deficit reduction committee. Essentially, the idea is here are just some ideas of where government can be reined in. Now, I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but perhaps it's saying to every agency, hey, Department of Energy, where do you see cutbacks are possible? They submit a report, and then perhaps it would be Elon and Vivek who then would present that to Trump. They could all decide from there. But I would imagine that a number of lawmakers would want to exercise their congressional authority before any serious changes are made.
Mark, remember that when we would see the government waste and it was like T-shirts for certain causes or shrimp on a treadmill? That's what this reminds me of, pulling back the curtain to see where your tax
Yeah, and there was
dollars
always the advocacy groups in D.C. that would present a report every year of like the biggest waste. I mean, I think many taxpayers would be outraged if they saw where some of their tax dollars went to. Of course, the federal government is such a huge entity. It is not easy for any of us to get our arms around it. But Trump says there simply has to be changes.
Thank you very much, Mark. Keep in mind, going with the pork barrel stuff back in the day, that's back when there was a lot of it because your congressman would go to Washington, D.C., and then next thing you know, they're building a bridge or they're building that shrimp on a treadmill laboratory or stuff like that.
They would throw all of it in a bill.
Right. And, well, it was in different bills, but they would bring the money back home and then they would be heroes. But they've pretty much gotten rid of a lot of that pork and a lot of those earmarks.
Simpson Bowles, these guys gave up 3 or 2 years of their lives to study how to make government more efficient. And President Obama looked at it and said, we'll never do this. I'll never get congressional approval for this. So I would look at the Simpson Bowles, what they came up with, see if any of that is usable because they did a lot of the work, paid millions of dollars, and of course they don't use it. And these were two retired senators at the time. But let's talk about the new lineup. Pete Hegseth came out, what time last night? Around 9 o'clock?
Earlier.
I think it was earlier.
7 o'clock.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
6:45.
Yep.
Yeah, it was during Laura Ingram's show.
Before Sean's show, yeah. So Pete, our friend, we're so proud of you, Pete, if you're watching. He's our weekend co-host, sits right here on the curvy couch, and he has just been such an advocate of Donald Trump's, but more importantly, the military. It is his life. He loves meeting with veterans. Every time we go to diners, all the veterans say, where's Pete? Yeah. How's Pete? What's he really like? He's a great guy. Look at this. He served our country. Army National Guard infantry officer, served tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then he was a guard at Gitmo, 2 Bronze Stars, Combat Infantryman badge.
Yep. He went to also Princeton and Harvard. Of course, he's been at Fox News for 10 years, and he was the CEO of Concerned Veterans of America. A huge pick by the president-elect. And if you're wondering why Washington is freaking out about this appointment, he wrote a book about the corruption that's going on in the Department of Defense, all the focus on wokeness. As you remember, they also targeted him, tried to force him into retirement. And so if the Pentagon is not in support of this, that there may be a little reason why.
And the reason, and this is a great point, Lawrence, the fact that he has written a number of New York Times #1 best-selling books, but his book called War on Warriors, essentially, and I'm sure Donald Trump either has read the book or has watched Pete's specials, and Donald Trump would go, you know what? What he's talking about right there is what I would like to do. So this is why it makes perfect sense why Pete would get tapped for this particular job.
Keep an eye on Lee Zeldin, too. I think he's going to have a real important job to get our energy together. He's going to allow the drilling, natural gas, the pipelines back together, get the export going over to Europe. The other positions that need to be filled, Treasury, Attorney General, Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, Labor, HHS. So
get any ideas.
Transportation, Energy, and Education.
Not like Pete.
I have no specialty.
Also, Brian, Attorney General is still open as well. Also, I heard some rumors this morning. Kash Patel is on the short list, almost there.
For AG?
To be at the FBI.
Right.
So
keep
your eye on him.
They were suggesting
that means Chris Wray would be fired and Kash Patel would be brought in.
Right. The story a couple days ago was that Kash Patel might go to the CIA, but Mr. Ratcliffe is going there. There's one you left off the list, and that is Marco Rubio. We think he's going to be Secretary of State. We heard that a couple of days ago. Here we are on Wednesday. We heard about it on Monday. Still no official notification that he's been nominated.
I would say this. I thought the same thing, and I was communicating with someone very higher up last night, said there's no problems, it's a go.
I'm hearing the same thing.
Well, then why haven't we heard about it?
Even Senator Fetterman.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Hegseth to be Defense Secretary, meaning he's going to be leading the Pentagon and probably so much more. And people are freaking out. This man is a newscaster. He works for Fox News, blah, 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 blah. However, he is also a military veteran, and, he definitely has a lot of experience in it, just like you heard over there at Fox. Okay, so Karen Jean-Pierre holds a White House briefing right now. This is live from Washington, D.C. This is live. One more time, I repeat, this is live. We'll tap your screen twice to like this video. Subscribe to the channel. God bless everybody on the live show right now. Thank you to the moderators. Slim Barbie Savage, I see you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. God bless you. Chris Peterson, Rochelle, Luke, Crystal, off the hooks, Jigs. Everybody, see Shelly, you know what time it is. Curry B, Zyros Garden, Joseph Mason, even the people who don't agree with what I'm saying. Aaron Overton, God bless you. All right, White House Press Secretary right here.
What is President Biden's message to G20 leaders on these two issues and on the institutions and frameworks that hold them up? I'm talking about NATO and the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, so look, obviously they talked about the necessity and the for 2025 since for 2024. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Policy question? Jake on the Amazon tree.
Thank you, Jake.
Congrats on becoming a congressional spouse.
I just have one more thing, and then I'll go into your questions. So today, the President and the First Lady welcomed nearly 200 education and workforce leaders to the White House for the Biden-Harris administration's Classroom Career Summit. The administration's Investing in America agenda is creating millions of good-paying jobs, many of which do not require a four-year college degree, and its investments will continue to drive job creation for years to come. The summit highlighted the record progress to expand career pathways to these good-paying jobs in infrastructure, clean energy, advanced manufacturing, and so much more. With that, Josh, it's good to see you, as always.
Good to see you, Corinne. Regarding the meeting.
Yeah.
President Biden has given a lot of statements about his concern for the U.S. democracy. Did he share any of those concerns with President-elect Trump in their meeting about what he feels should be done or needs to be done?
So I'm not going to go into granular detail of what was discussed in the meeting. What I can say that it was indeed very cordial, very gracious, and substantive. And I mentioned at the top, national security was discussed, domestic policy issues were discussed. I had an opportunity to speak with the president in the Oval Office right before coming out to do this press briefing because I wanted to make sure that I got what the president wanted to share with all of you. So certainly that everything that I'm saying is sanctioned, if you will, by the president. He wanted you all to know that the president-elect, again, was gracious, came with a detailed set of questions. It was, again, substantive. But I do want to take a little bit of a step back here because it's really important to note, and you're going to hear me continuing to say this over and over again, the importance of having a smooth transition, an importance of having an orderly transition. The president respects the will of the American people and wants to make sure that occurs. That is what he believes the American people deserve. And so that is as far as I can go. That is what I am sharing with you from the president directly. And look, we're going to make sure, as Jake Sullivan was saying, that his team has what they need, right? They want to make sure that it is indeed an efficient, effective transition so that we hand over the people's business so that they can continue the people's business.
Can you say how President Biden answered some of those detailed questions?
I will say that the president certainly looked forward to the meeting, appreciated the conversation, and answered any questions that the president-elect had, offered up his thoughts, but I'm not going to go any further than that. Get Mary.
You said gracious, cordial, substantive. The president obviously hit on a wide range of issues, but did he get a sense that the issues that he was impressing upon, that any advice he was giving was being well received?
I think so. I think that's why the president was wanting me to let you all know that there was a very good back and forth, and it was substantive, as I mentioned before, and I want to be mindful. It was a private conversation, so I don't want to go into specifics or details. But look, they met for more than 2 hours. They met for a very long time, or nearly 2 hours, pardon me. And I think by the length of the meeting tells you that they had an in-depth conversation on an array of issues. And so, look, the president reached out to the president-elect wanting to make sure that he gave an opportunity to the president-elect, afforded him that opportunity to have a meeting with him to talk about the different issues that matter to the American people. But nearly 2 hours says a lot about how the meeting went.
Any plans to keep a line of communication open?
The president is always going to, obviously, keep that line of communication open to the president-elect. We got to remember, this is not about the two presidents. This is not about President Biden or President-elect Trump. This is about the American people and what's right for the American people. And if anything, the president has led by example, right, over the last week now on making sure that we have this cordial transition of power.
On just one other topic. President-elect Trump's nominee for defense secretary has questioned whether or not women should serve in combat roles in the military. Wondering what the administration makes of that. Is there any concern about women's ability to serve in certain roles going forward?
I think we've made ourselves really clear. I'm not going to speak to this pick. That's not the president's going. The president-elect is going to lay out his certainly his personnel and who he wants to fill these cabinet positions, who he wants to be in the White House with him, and we will give them the space to do that. But I think we've been very clear about how we see the importance of gender equality, the importance of women in the workforce. I think we have been an administration that has led on that issue, and certainly we do not agree with those views, but that is for obviously the president-elect to speak to his picks, and I'm going to let them do that. Okay, John.
You said the president-elect came with a detailed list of questions. That's surprising to me. What was on his list?
I'm not going to go into details of what was on the list. I shared that, and the president wanted you all to know that because we want to be very clear. It was actually a substantive meeting, nearly 2 hours. There was a lot discussed. There was a lot of back and forth. And I'm not going to go into specifics. I think if the president-elect wants to share his set of questions to President Biden, he certainly can and will if he chooses. But wanted to give you as much information as I could without going into too much specifics on a private conversation.
Was the list typed out on a piece of paper?
I don't have. I appreciate the effort there, Jeff. I don't have anything beyond that.
Did the issue of the fact that President Trump did not acknowledge President Biden as the winner in the 2020 election come up today?
What we want to do is move forward. We do.
Really?
No, seriously. What we want to do is move forward. We respect the will of the people. There was an election, as you know, last week, and the American people spoke. And so the president is going to make sure that he puts the American people first. He's going to make sure that we move forward in this process, in this transition process, in a way that is respectful to the American people and to lead by example. And so that's our focus. That's what we want to do. I think the president has shown that in the past week of that leadership. And so that's what you're going to hear. That's what we're going to continue to do in the 68 days that we have left in this administration.
I understand that. I guess that just seems like a piece of unfinished business between them. Did it come up at all?
Look, that is something certainly that I would leave for the president-elect to speak to. What I can speak to is this president wanting to focus on the American people, wanting to focus on issues that matter, domestic policy issues, national security issues that are critical and important in how we move forward as a country. That's what the president wanted to focus on. Again, it was gracious, it was substantive, and I think that's what's important. And what we are showing the American people is how you do this. How do you have a peaceful transition of power, how it looks, and leading by example. And that is quintessential Joe Biden, I believe. Good.
Yeah, thanks, Green. I'm just trying to understand. I mean, besides demonstrating a peaceful transfer of power, what was the big message that President Biden was trying to convey to incoming President Trump?
I think just that, and the American people. You know, you all those who were able to be in the room got to see the two presidents sitting side by side, shaking hands. You heard what the president-elect talked about politics being tough, and understanding what that looks like. We get that as well, And I'll go back to what we said last week. Did the elections turn out the way we wanted? Absolutely not. Are we disappointed? Yes, we're disappointed. But again, there was an election, the American people decided, and what the president wants to focus on is what it looks like. What it looks like to move forward, to put the country first, to put the American people first, and move forward in a respectful way. And I think that was also the message that you saw from this president today.
Does the White House have any reaction to this Department of Government Efficiency that Trump announced yesterday? He's brought on Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to lead. Says the group is being tasked to find ways to cut government spending, waste regulations. Does the White House have any concerns about this effort, or do you think maybe it's a good idea to look at these things?
No comment. I'm not going to comment. Okay.
You talked about ensuring that the next administration has all the resources they need for this transition, but one thing that needs to happen in order for the Trump transition to have access to agencies and such are these signings of the memorandums of understanding with both the GSA and the White House, including an ethics plan. Did that come up in any way in the conversation today, even if it was just between Jeff Zients and Susie Wiles?
And I was just going to say that, as you know, Jeff Zients, the chief of staff, had an opportunity to speak with the incoming chief of staff. I have not spoken to Jeff on if that issue came up, but Jeff has been leading this effort of making sure that we have that smooth transition of power. We are ready. We are ready to go. And I've also mentioned that the co-chairs of the Trump transition have said that they are in public have said that they are going to sign the MOUs. So I'm going to have to leave it to them. We're ready. And Jake, I think, put it really well when he said it doesn't mean that we can't still have conversations. It doesn't mean we can't engage with our counterparts or those who have been picked by the president-elect to come into this administration. Certainly, we are open to that and want that to happen. But I would have to refer you to the Trump transition, they have said they would sign those MOUs.
And back in 2000, then Vice President Al Gore actually hosted George W. Bush a few days after he had conceded the election. When Bush came to meet with Clinton, he then went on to meet with Gore. Did Vice President Harris stop by the meeting at all today? And does she intend to host Vice President?
So I can say the Vice President did not attend the meeting between the two presidents this morning. I would have to refer you to her team on how she wishes to move forward and her part in all of this. But you also heard from her last week when she talked about the importance as well of having a peaceful transition of power. So leave that to her to answer. Go ahead.
Just to work out a few of the details. So it was four of them in that room: the president, the president-elect, chief of staff, the chief of staff designate.
Yes, sir.
Were the two presidents ever left alone in the room?
I don't have anything beyond what I shared. What I can say is it happened for approximately 2 hours, and it included the current chief of staff, the incoming chief of staff, and obviously the two presidents. I can't speak if the presidents had the presidents themselves, President-elect and President Biden had an opportunity to speak privately. I can't speak to that. I didn't ask.
Over in the diplomatic room, right?
Right. So to your point, you are correct. We sent out a pool note about how the President Biden, and also First Lady Dr. Biden greeted President-elect Trump upon his arrival, and just to add a little bit of color there, she gave the President-elect a handwritten letter to congratulate Mrs. Trump, and so also express their readiness to be involved and engaged with her team, Mrs. Trump's team, and so that specific piece, obviously, I would direct to the First Lady's office. But yes, they first met and greeted each other in the diplomatic room.
But Jake or nobody else came in, or
it was just the four. It was just the four of them, as far as who was in the room with the president.
And was in the Oval the whole time.
As far, yes, it was in the Oval. The Oval meeting was in the Oval, as I just stated, and you flagged for me that they greeted the president. They meaning the First Lady, and also the President Biden greeted President-elect Trump when he arrived.
I have one other question about this weekend that people might wonder.
Yeah.
It's their third meeting since President Biden took office, but why bother having a meeting with Chinese President Xi if there's only 68 days left to go on the Biden presidency?
Look, this is, Joe Biden. He understands the importance of having face-to-face, one-on-one conversations with world leaders. And I think Jake did a pretty good job laying out what's next, what they are thinking about, the reason for having the bilat. But it is an opportunity. They're both going to be in Peru. They're both going to be attending the APEC conference. It was an opportunity for them to meet. I think it's important. The issues that they're obviously going to speak about are important to the American people. As you think about national security, you think about Indo-Pacific. And so, I think this is very much something that the president would do, have that face-to-face, have those in-person conversations with other world leaders on issues that matter here to us and obviously globally. Okay, Peter.
Thanks, Green. Did President Biden show incoming President Trump anything classified?
No.
No. Why not?
Why would he? This was an opportunity for them to speak candidly, openly. I've said to you that it was gracious, it was incredibly substantive, and I'll just leave it there.
The last time these two were together in the same room was at the debate. They talked a fair amount about playing golf. Do you know if a plan was made for them to play golf in President Biden's retirement?
Actually, that's not the last time they saw each other. They saw each other at September 11th. I'm going to move on. Go ahead, Ed.
In the meeting, we saw a unified front related to a transition in the Oval Office meeting. But a lot was said on the campaign trail, like Trump is a dangerous threat to our country and our democracy. Was there an apology today?
I'm sorry?
Was there an apology from
President
Biden for the words, some of the words used?
An apology from the President Biden.
To President-elect Trump for some of the words that was used on the campaign trail.
Look, and I've answered this a couple of times about a threat to democracy in the past week. The president is going to always feel obligated to be honest with the American people. What he says still stands. And it's not just him. You heard this from former staffers. You've heard that from the former chief of staff, John Kelly, and others. You've heard it directly from the president-elect, the former president, about enemy of the people. Very, very clear. Very clear. What we want to be also very clear about is the importance of listening to the will of the American people. There was an election. It is important to respect our institution. It is important to respect the free and fair elections. And that's what this president is doing, leading by example and putting that aside and putting the American people first. But what he said still stands. And it's not just him. We should not just put this at the president. His own people said this. So I want to be really, really clear about that and not forget the facts. There are facts here that we should certainly also lift up as you're asking me these questions. Go ahead, Anita.
Thank you. Did the two presidents discuss transatlantic security or climate change efforts and the U.S. role in that? And relatedly, what is President Biden's message to G20 leaders on these two issues and on the institutions and frameworks that hold them up? I'm talking about NATO and the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, so look, obviously they talked about national security issues, mentioned that already. There was a substantive, pretty detailed set of questions that the president-elect presented the President Biden with. They went back and forth on that. I don't have anything. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, into the specifics of what those topics were. Not something that I'm going to do from here. And look, the president is looking forward to going to the G20. You heard Jake do a pretty good laydown of the importance of the president going. It will be his last G20. Obviously, he's also going to go to APEC. APEC will be first. And the importance of meeting with these world leaders on issues and matters that are important to the American people. That's what you're going to see. This is going to be a continuation of the progress that we have made in almost 4 years on the world stage, whether it's talking about Ukraine and continue to support Ukraine, talking about Indo-Pacific, talking about the Middle East and how to move forward here. And so all of those issues and topics are certainly going to come up. And the president looks forward to having those conversations.
That we know that President-elect Trump does not look favorably upon NATO or upon the Paris climate change agreement.
That's something for the president-elect to speak to. I mean, he has. What we have done here in the past 4 years is strengthen NATO. What we have done here is making sure that we strengthen our relationship with allies and partners. What we have done here is put the American people first, put our national security first, and really have conversation with world leaders on shared priorities. And so that's going to continue in the next 68 days. And that's the progress that the president wants to continue to have conversations about, and that's what you're going to see on this next Oconus trip.
Thank you. I think in this room we've all watched the very somber speeches that the president gave on democracy in Philadelphia at the Capitol, and today we see these pictures of two leaders chatting around a fireplace. There's a stark contrast here, and isn't there a risk that in the future, when voters are faced with warnings about democracy, they're just going to dismiss them and think this is just campaign stuff, this is just political?
I think there are two different things here. When it comes to what the president said in the past year, even more so about our democracy, the importance of our democracy, let's not forget, we saw that Americans do care about democracy. They care about protecting our freedoms. That is something that the president's never going to shy away from. He's never going to shy away talking about that. And it is important on how we move forward, right? Is important. But what we're seeing right now is also a democratic principle, right? When we're talking about transition of power, it is about our democratic principle as well. It is about continuing that transfer of power. It is about continuing that democracy. I know I said these are two different things, but are also connected as well. And so for him to do that, for him to invite the president-elect and to have important conversations on issues that matter to the American people is actually part of what democracy looks like. And the president is never going to shy away from that. And again, were the elections what we had hoped? Absolutely not. We're not hiding that. We've been very clear about that. But we have to move forward. We have to move forward on behalf of the American people. And what you saw and what you're going to see when we talk about transition is about our democratic principles. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. Going back to her question on the G20, Jake was saying that he is hoping for some progress. But is progress possible when allies, the G20 allies, are trying to understand and are expecting a change in the administration here? So how does the incoming administration can undermine this progress they are trying to reach there? And also progress with the Brazilian government on climate, democracy, and labor cooperation that are going to expect to discuss there.
Yeah, I'm not going to get ahead of what's going to be discussed at the G20, and I'm not going to get ahead of what the Trump administration policies are going to look like. That is certainly something for them to address and how they move forward on domestic policies, national security policies, and they will do just that. What I can talk about is the progress that the president wants to continue to make, and the strengthening of our alliances, strengthening of our partnerships, and making sure that we continue to stand up with Ukraine as they continue to fight against Russia's aggression, and a range of issues of Indo-Pacific to the Middle East. You talked about climate change, especially as it relates to Brazil. So those issues are going to be discussed. We've made progress on all of those policies that we're going back and forth on. I'm just not going to speak to private conversations that are going to happen, what's going to be discussed, and just speak to what we can do, what we're looking to do, and why it's important. This ACONUS that the president's going to go on is going to be a continuation of what he has been able to do for almost 4 years now.
And what does Trump victory mean to the world?
You know, what I can say, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, what the president is going to do is continuing to make sure that we follow the election results, the will of the people, majority of Americans decided. And what we can do is make sure that democracy continues here by doing this transition of power and doing it in an effective, orderly, peaceful way. And the president is going to focus on the progress that he's made. He has relationships with these world leaders, obviously, not just for some of them, not just the past almost 4 years, but for some time. And, you know, he'll have honest, direct conversations with them. I'm just not going to get into philosophizing and getting into the bigger picture. I'm just going to focus on what's ahead in the next 68 days. Go ahead, Kelly. I think I have to head out.
Do you know if President-elect Trump has already started to receive intelligence briefings, or if there's plans to start doing those briefings again?
That's something for ODNI to speak to, not something for me to speak from here. Okay.
I'm going to kind of try and circle back on this. You said that the conversation was cordial, gracious, substantive. Was there any acknowledgement about some of the harsh rhetoric that Donald Trump had issued regarding Kamala Harris, calling her, for example, a low IQ individual, et cetera?
I don't have anything to share beyond what I stated at the top and during these back and forths. Don't have anything outside of that. Okay. Good.
Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question. Was there any acknowledgement or discussion about the election and how the vice president ran her campaign?
I don't have anything else beyond what I just stated. Go ahead, Phil.
I might be trying the same thing again and again.
Yeah,
but you talked about how this was a cordial discussion between the two of them, how the incoming president came with a list of questions. Were there any top-level areas of agreement or overlap between the two presidents in terms of maybe challenges that are ahead for the country or potential solutions? Any areas of agreement?
A lot was discussed. It was a detailed set of questions. The president appreciated having a substantive conversation with the president-elect. I'm not going to go into details. Maybe the president-elect will speak on his behalf on what he wants to share coming out of the meeting. But this is what we're going to share from here. 2 hours nearly 2 hours is a long time to talk about what's important for the American people and how to move forward. And I think that's important. I appreciate the effort. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
For the record, can you just find out if there was any time that the two met individually so we're all on the same page?
And will there be photos?
Thank you for tuning into the live stream. You know what time it is. Okay. You heard from KJP. All right, what do we have here? It says here, Dems keep lying about Trump. I don't know what this means, but let's see what they got going on. KJP is definitely ready to go.
First, leaderless and rudderless. That's the focus of tonight's angle.
The biggest problem here rests with Donald Trump and his vice presidential candidate as to whether they're going to be big enough to accept the results of the election.
This is probably the most important election in our lifetime, and we have to make sure that we get it right.
I'm concerned about what they're going to do.
Well, those are all fake, right? And as the angle predicted, the Democrats were just projecting. They couldn't deny Trump's win, not the size of it this time, but they still won't concede in that Pennsylvania Senate race won by Republican Dave McCormick.
Across our Commonwealth, close to 7 million people cast their votes in a free
and fair election. Our county election officials will finish counting those votes just like they do in every election. The American democratic process was born in Pennsylvania, and that process will play out.
It's a shock with that energy level that he didn't immediately get reelected. Well, he's just another Democratic election denier. There's a whole trail of them. So what happens when the so-called threat to democracy wins a Democratic majority? Not just the Electoral College, but makes historic gains with other groups and wins the popular vote as well.
Mr. President, is Trump still a threat to democracy?
And if Trump really had fascistic impulses, it would be kind of odd for Biden to have invited him to visit the White House tomorrow, right? Well, of course, this is why this was always a vicious and desperate lie. But still, the propaganda did have some effect. According to AP Votecast, about 2/3 of Harris voters said the future of democracy was the most important factor for their votes. Apparently, groceries didn't matter. And 9 out of 10 were concerned that electing Trump would bring the country closer to authoritarianism, say the people who want us to eat bugs. Again, all based on lies. Trump never used the DOJ to attack his political opponents. He never flooded the country with illegal immigrants to wipe out your votes or, fought against requiring IDs to vote, all of which compromises our democratic system. Which is why it should not surprise anyone that the same voter survey also demonstrated that 1 in 3 Trump voters cited saving democracy as their primary motivator. And of those, 8 in 10 of the Trump voters felt electing Harris would bring the country closer to authoritarianism. How interesting. And given Kamala's own record and her own well-documented views, those fears were well-founded. Thankfully, enough of you dismissed the anti-Trump smears and saw Harris and her puppet masters for what they are: threats to our freedom, to our economy, and to our way of life. But like mercury, remember what used to fall out of an old broken thermometer? The Democrat machine will reconstitute itself. And to do that effectively, they're wrestling over what went wrong. And at times it's gotten fairly brutal. Bernie Sanders smashed the out-of-touch party bureaucracy that lost the working class, saying in a statement, "Will the big money interests and well-paid consultants who control the Democratic Party learn any real lesson from this disastrous campaign? Probably not." No, that's a safe bet. But if there is a real effort to redefine the party, the progressives, they're worrying about being sidelined. And if they are worried, if they are sidelined, they have no one but themselves to blame. They are all sellouts. And Bernie's kind of a sellout too, because they compromised their anti-war cred by standing mute when Liz Cheney became Kamala's de facto running mate. But now they're trashing Democrats who pivot from more radical positions?
I think that a lot of voters really don't like fake people. If during the entire time in campaign season, you're saying that you're down with trans people or the LGBT community, and then you lose an election, and then the next day you say all that stuff was wrong. I actually think what people are more upset about is someone was doing something they didn't believe and just saying something.
So articulate. Now, AOC is grousing about people like Congressman Seth Moulton, who post-election claimed that his party had gone too extreme, saying that I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or a formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. Well, that kicked off the family feud. Grab the popcorn.
I wonder then what your response was to Congressman Seth Moulton, who suggested this week that Democrats need to change their approach to transgender issues.
I just find that to be an offensive comment, actually. I don't think that just trying to instill fear and joining a party that is instilling people is the right way to go about this.
Well, it's about time we saw some cracks in the Democrat wall, the monolith, past the junior mints.
I do want to give you a chance to explain your comments because you know they have faced backlash.
The backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party. Instead, we have a wing of our party that shames us, that tries to cancel people who even bring up these difficult topics, and frankly, shames voters.
Well, given the inroads that Trump has made with young voters, Latino and black voters in urban America, even some in California, well, what the heck can Democrats offer? Abortion and saving democracy did not get it done. So why will it get it done in 2028? And given the epic failures of policy and messaging, who's left in the party with any credibility and any influence? Now, after the Trump win, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries sounded like he's auditioning for something.
We have problems that we have to solve. We've got to make sure, of course, that we fix our broken immigration system and we secure the border. We have to make sure that we lower costs and grow the middle class. I think we're going to have a family conversation that needs to be clear-eyed, candid, and comprehensive to figure out what happened on election night.
Well, that's a tall order. But with Kamala going down in flames, with the Obamas, they're getting burned, with Pelosi getting old, Democrats need someone to lead them. And when the bench isn't really deep, well, Jeffries actually becomes a viable candidate. Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett calling Jeffries the ultimate point guard with on-court discipline. Now, of course, in this Democrat regrouping period, let's not forget the guy who Kamala stupidly passed over, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, a very talented politician. He's a lot more likely than California liberal Gavin Newsom to gain traction, and we can only hope that Democrats may look at Mayor Pete for something important. Talk about a train wreck. Yes, that's a DOT joke. Good luck with Pete. Anyway, this parlor game is going to continue for years. I can't wait to watch it unfold, and someone new could emerge with just the sort of passion we need.
Y'all need to leave me the alone because I got one more cigarette in me before I start lighting up. All right? And that's word to the United States of mother America. Yeah.
You never know. She has a very big TikTok following. And that's the angle.
There's an exhilarating startup culture emanating out of Mar-a-Lago, where Trump and his transition team are pulling in the best and brightest into rooms and asking them, what do you got? Elon Musk has a seat at the table, and he's spitballing ideas that have never been tried in government. He's been camped out at Mar-a-Lago and sitting in on hiring sessions. And Trump's drinking in Elon's ideas and stress testing them. Axios says the two billionaires are fusing into a new, powerful governing media paradigm. Elon calls himself the first buddy. Trump's granddaughter, Kai, says Elon's already achieving uncle status. The transition team's moving fast and already shaking up Washington. And this just in. Fox News alert, Donald Trump has announced that he's nominating Fox News host Pete Hegseth to serve as Secretary of Defense. Pete's a decorated Army combat vet who did tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and has been a fierce advocate for veterans on and off the air. He's a Princeton and Harvard guy and a great husband and father and one of our favorite people here at Fox. No one loves America more than Pete, and no one will defend our interests at home and abroad with more seriousness and strength. He'll be working right alongside former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, who has just been named CIA Director. Besides running intelligence ops, we expect Ratcliffe to facilitate the release of the government files on the JFK assassination, the Epstein case, the lab leak, Hunter Biden's sugar brother, and the Trump assassination attempts. That would rebuild trust with the American people. Although I'm not sure if we can expect full transparency from a CIA director. We'll see. And this also just in. President Trump has just announced that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will be in charge of dismantling government bureaucracy, slashing regulations, cutting wasteful spending, and just restructuring bloated agencies. These two will lead the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, D-O-G-E. Trump likens it to the Manhattan Project, which will make the government leaner and more effective in order to better serve the American people. The government's long been an orgy of fraud and abuse, and Trump promises that although it'll send shockwaves through D.C., It'll ultimately be a gift to the American people on our 250th birthday, which we'll be celebrating in 2026. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem has been tapped to be Secretary of Homeland Security. Thank God Mayorkas is gone. This is a big job for Governor Noem. She'll oversee the Secret Service, FEMA, Border Patrol, and ICE. That's a lot of bureaucracy to wrap your arms around. Bureaucracy with a lot of problems. She'll have her work cut out for her. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee has just been named ambassador to Israel. Not Jewish, but close enough. We're still waiting for Trump to name his Attorney General, Treasury Secretary, Press Secretary, and Health and Human Services person. We're wondering where RFK Jr. is going to land, along with Tulsi Gabbard. As Trump picks his cabinet, the world is watching. Iran has done a 180. The mullahs are saying, President Trump, sorry we tried to kill you. Let's make peace. And the president of South Korea is practicing his golf swing for the first time in 8 years. He's expecting to play a few rounds with 47. Oh, and the media is in full retreat. Reports say CNN's going to be axing top stars and making others take pay cuts. Chris Wallace just resigned from CNN out of the blue. Comcast has been thinking of spinning off and selling MSNBC. And we all know what's going on at the Washington Post. Oh, and Mark Cuban just got caught deleting all of his pro-Harris tweets, like no one would notice. Every Democrat's trying to wipe away any fingerprints they've left on this campaign. The Obamas are coming out and saying it wasn't our idea to put Kamala in. We wanted a primary. Blame the Biden people.
The people who are giving these unnamed quotes are the people who are in this kind of bubble of enablers that should have gone to him long ago and said, cash in your chips, boss. You'll be thought of more highly.
Right.
And you'll give your party a better chance to win. But they are all, holding hands in this circle of denial.
No, they were part of the cover-up.
If he had walked away, it would have been country over self. I think people would have admired him for it. And it really, anyway, I've said my piece.
Nancy Pelosi says the same thing. It's all Biden's fault. But the ladies of The View, they're going to bat for Joe.
If you've got nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. I mean, why, Nancy? Why? I find this so unproductive, so nasty, so unnecessary. It's like she wants to make sure that people know it wasn't her. She has no blame in this. I said Biden should have gotten out earlier. I said there shouldn't have been a primary. Don't blame me. I think it's really unseemly. It's done, folks. Donald Trump won, and he won decisively. Stop blaming Joe Biden. Eso es muy feo, muy feo.
Muy feo. Bernie's been running to the cameras telling everybody, I told you so. And now AOC's backing him up. She's calling Kamala fake.
Personally, I don't. I think that a lot of voters really don't like fake people, and they're sick and tired of fake politicians. And so what I actually think is worse is saying something you don't believe. And then you lose an election, and then the next day you say all that stuff was wrong. I actually think what people are more upset about is someone was doing something they didn't believe and just saying something. Like, if you actually weren't about that life, why did you campaign as though you were?
Everyone's running away from Harris. And why wouldn't they? She burned them for $1 billion and wasn't even close. Her campaign looks like one big fat money laundering operation. She was shaking down billionaires to pay millionaires. Oprah was forced to admit, yeah, she was paid $1 million for her Kamala interview. She says, I did not take any personal fee. However, the people who worked on that production needed to be paid and were. End of story. She's not the only one. Just weeks before Kamala did an interview with Al Sharpton, the Harris campaign donated $500,000 to Reverend's nonprofit. That's according to the Free Beacon. Why is Kamala's presidential campaign funneling $500,000 to the National Action Network right before an interview with Al? The National Action Network. Why is a political campaign bribing Al Sharpton with charitable donations? Do you know what Al Sharpton does with money from his nonprofit? The Rev, in 1 year, spent $1 million on private jets and limos. It's a slush fund for the Reverend and his crew. It's been in trouble with the IRS for years for tax evasion. And Kamala's like, oh, here you go. Take $500,000. Imagine if you gave Kamala $500,000 to win Pennsylvania, and she just handed it to Al to take a private jet to Tahiti. Happy DEI Thursday. This is the same campaign that the media said was perfect.
Kamala Harris ran basically a flawless campaign.
I think because she ran an incredible campaign, it's been very telling about who we are.
She ran a flawless campaign, and I maintain that.
This really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign.
I mean, it was flawless if you were Al Sharpton. But the Raging Cajun, he's headed up to here and wants the entire Democrat establishment to just do a walk of shame out of Washington and repent for their sins.
Justify what you did wrong and tell us what you're going to do different, because what you've done ain't worth. All right? Get your head around that. In all of the Washington-based Democrats farting around, going to wine and cheese parties and talking about how misogynistic race comes, get your ass out of Washington and go work on a 2026 campaign and do penance to make up for your goddamn arrogance and stupidity.
All the Democrats can now do is just pray for the second coming. Hopefully for them, another Messiah just mysteriously appears out of Hawaii.
And welcome to Hannity. And tonight, the 2024 election is in the books, and Thanksgiving, we have a lot to be thankful for, is just around the corner. But unfortunately, some on the radical left, they are determined to use the holiday season to take another political stand. They want to cast out their own family and close friends. I'm not making it up. You decide.
I completely understand her point, because I really do feel that this candidate, President-elect Trump, is just a different type of candidate. From the things he's said and the things he's done and the things he will do, it's more of a moral issue for me.
Don't want to be at Thanksgiving dinner with her. Probably turkey legs, mashed potatoes being thrown around. Anyway, tonight we're going to take a step back. Dr. Drew Pinsky is going to join us with advice how to navigate what will be a very challenging holiday season for so many families with loved ones who are totally consumed with Trump derangement syndrome. But while hysteria continues on the left, Donald Trump is getting to work big time. Breaking only moments ago, Donald Trump announced that our good friend and our colleague, Pete Hegseth, he will be nominated as the Secretary of Defense. Now, Pete is an Army veteran. He served in Iraq. He served in Afghanistan. He also earned 2 Bronze Stars. He also holds degrees from Princeton and Harvard and has made it his life's work to advocate for our veterans and active duty service members. His passion is and has always been the U.S. military, and that I know is a fact. And that's not all. The president-elect also announced that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will lead the new Department of Government Efficiency. Get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. Wouldn't that be great? According to Elon Musk, quote, this will send shock waves through the system. Anyone involved in government waste, which is a lot of people, well, their work will conclude no later than July 4th, 2026. As President Trump stated, quote, this will be the perfect gift to America on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Meanwhile, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, my senator, is now expected to be tapped as Donald Trump's Secretary of State. Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, he has now been picked to lead the CIA. Congressman Mike Waltz, a decorated Green Beret, will join Trump as his national security advisor. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem has been picked to be the Homeland Security Secretary. And former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, who will join us in just a moment, he has been nominated as the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. As FoxNews.com put it, Donald Trump is forming his cabinet at breakneck speed compared to 2016. And tomorrow, the president-elect, he is scheduled to be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to meet at the White House with Joe Biden. Earlier today, when asked about his meeting, Karine Jean-Pierre was short on details, as per usual. What a shock. Take a look.
Did President Biden invite Vice President Harris to this meeting with Donald Trump tomorrow?
This is a meeting with the president and the president-elect, this is the norm, that the incoming president and the current president sit down in the Oval Office and have a discussion, and that's what you're going to see tomorrow, is the norm, what we normally would see when we are talking about a peaceful transition of power.
President Biden says that he's not going to pardon his son, Hunter. Is he going to ask Donald Trump to do that?
I don't have anything else to share about that. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole on this. I've been very clear. The president's been very clear when we've been asked this question.
In reality, this is not business as usual. In fact, that will be a running theme throughout the second Trump term. And as for Hunter Biden and that pardon, the president-elect is not ruling it out for the sake of national unity. We will find out in the days, weeks, and months to come. On the campaign trail, President Trump said he wouldn't take it off the books, despite the egregious lawfare by the Biden administration and the fact that Hunter is, quote, a bad guy, or a bad boy, to quote him exactly. Now, Melania Trump, on the other hand, well, is not quite as forgiving, and I don't blame her. According to the New York Post, she declined an invitation to meet with Dr. Jill Biden tomorrow, citing the unprecedented raid at Mar-a-Lago authorized by the weaponized Department of Justice of Joe Biden, saying, quote, a source saying, she ain't going. A source familiar with Melania's decision told the Post Jill Biden's husband authorized the FBI snooping through her underwear drawer, and the Bidens are disgusting. And Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, remember this, they both had top secret classified information. Joe had it in 4 separate locations. Their homes were not invaded. Donald Trump never had used bleach bit or used hammers and removed SIM cards and broke up devices. But this weaponization of justice must forever, Democrat, Republican, end. It has got to stop. The DOJ, the FBI being politicized, intel agencies politicized, they now need to return forever to their original non-political purpose and their former greatness. That has got to be the goal. But the Bidens will soon be out of the White House once and for all. And on January 20th, 2025, the reckoning will begin in the Washington swamp. The monolithic far-left city that does not represent the whole of America is about to be rocked to its core. But despite the fear-mongering on the left, Donald Trump is not threatening democracy. He's not threatening our Constitution. America's massive bureaucracy, on the other hand, will soon face a very heavy dose of reality. Again, this is not going to be business as usual. That is not what the American people voted for. The decentralization of power, as our founders intended, is very much on its way to D.C. And the new Department of Government Efficiency will take an axe to government waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, Trump now plans to eliminate the entire Department of Education, send that money directly to the states. They would better know how to use it. Other departments like the EPA and the Bureau of Land Management can soon be relocated outside of the Washington swamp, and expect to see a major overhaul of the DOJ, DHS, and the FBI's Washington field office. Government agencies have been unaccountable and frankly out of control for far too long. And a pervasive far-left bias has tarnished America's once great institutions. They need to be restored. The only way to carry out the MAGA agenda and restore equal justice under the law is to reform America's bloated anti-Trump bureaucracy. Now, this will be a tall order, but it is one of the most important things the president must do at the very beginning of his administration. The stakes are high. The problems are big. The border, it must be secured immediately. Millions of criminal, illegal immigrants, including gang members, cartel members, drug dealers, people that we know are murderers and rapists, those that are known terrorists, they must be found. They must be deported. Peace, law, and order must be restored in every small town and every big city and around the world. America must now lead the way with energy dominance, innovation, development. Americans should not have to settle for a townhouse instead of a home with a backyard. Trump can and will restore the American dream and get government off of your back. It's called freedom. For far too long, Democratic elites in Washington, they have exerted their powers like petty tyrants. Those days, hopefully, will soon be over and end, and America will start functioning like a true republic once again.
Happy 1 week anniversary. Oh, happy Tuesday.
Look, I can't even begin to tell you, man. These are facts. These are facts, okay? The legend, the OG, the 45th, now the 47th, is doing his thing, okay? He's doing his thing. He's proven himself, and now this is his time to shine, okay? This is his time to shine. Double tap your screen so shine out, man.
Right now, CNN has a major projection to bring you in the battle for control of Congress. 1 week and 1 day after Election Day, CNN can now project that Republicans will hold on to control of the House of Representatives. This is based on projections that we've made combined with an analysis of results from House races across the country. In Arizona's 6th district, we've determined that Congressman Juan Ciscomani will win re-election. And in California's 41st, Ken Calvert, the Republican incumbent, will also win re-election. That gives Republicans the magic number of 218 seats needed to control the chamber.
So Democrats failing to win enough seats to reclaim the majority. And this is an important development for the GOP, which, as we said, we can now say will control both chambers of Congress and the White House. And that gives President-elect Trump the ability to carry out his agenda, assuming that he keeps all of the members of his party in line, because it is going to be a slim majority there in the House. So let's discuss now with CNN's Jeff Zeleny, David Chalian, and Manu Raju. Manu, he has all of these levers of power.
Yeah, single party rule is back in Washington. Remember, that's what Joe Biden had right off the bat. This is what Donald Trump had right off the bat in 2017 and 2018. He had single party rule then. He will have single party rule again. This is a Republican Party that is much different than it looked like when last time he was in town. There were more critics of Donald Trump back then. There are fewer critics right now, and Donald Trump will be able to work his will over the House GOP. No question about it. There's a very much a Trump House Republican conference, and just a huge blow for Democrats who had hoped that they could flip the House. The House had very few competitive districts. There were millions of dollars are spent in key districts like in California, in New York, and in the suburbs, and in places like Arizona, places where they thought they could pick up seats. Places that Joe Biden won, some in cases by double digits back in 2020. But given Donald Trump's gains across the maps, the Republicans down ticket were able to ride his coattails, and now they will have power in the House, subpoena power in the committees. Once again, also the ability to shape and drive legislation on the floor, put whatever they want on the House floor. Then it will go over to the United States Senate, now run by Senate Majority Leader, incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune. The Senate will be a different complication. It will need 60 votes to get most legislation through, meaning Democrats would be needed to pass most legislation. But nevertheless, a huge boost for the GOP. And now that we can project that the House will stay in Republican hands, guys.
And Manu, there have been some questions about whether House Speaker Mike Johnson would retain leadership of his conference in that chamber. Chip Roy of Texas suggested that he might face a leadership challenge. Of course, that came before we heard Donald Trump's endorsement of Speaker Johnson earlier today. What are you hearing about his chances? Does he have the votes?
Yeah, look, today Donald Trump said to his colleagues, to the GOP members, he supports Mike Johnson staying on. And they had a leadership forum this morning, and no challenger emerged for Mike Johnson, meaning that he is poised this afternoon to be nominated by his conference to be the next Speaker of the House. But here is the catch. On the House floor in January, he needs to be able to get 218 votes, meaning depending on what the final number is, we don't have the final number of House Republicans, but let's say there are 222 Republicans. That means he cannot lose more than 4 Republicans on the House floor in order to become elected Speaker of the House. And I caught up with one of his main detractors, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who behind closed doors today pressed Johnson and also yesterday to me criticized Johnson for not having a bigger House majority.
We should have a major majority, a super majority, but we don't. And we don't have that, I think, it's based on the performance of this Congress. This Congress has had a lot of failures in the eyes of our voters, in the eyes of the American people. The American people gave a mandate last Tuesday of the types of policies they want, the agenda that they want, and that's President Trump's policies that he laid out on the campaign.
Is Speaker Johnson to blame for that?
Yes, his leadership. Unfortunately, he fully passed the Biden-Harris agenda.
Now, Johnson told me yesterday he's not concerned about the votes in the House in January. He thinks he'll ultimately get there. He believes Donald Trump will help him get there, but just shows you, again, a razor-thin House Republican majority like they had at the beginning of this Congress and throughout this Congress, which has given them fits all along, led to the ouster, of course, of Kevin McCarthy, the last Speaker of the House. So the question will be, will those detractors like Marjorie Taylor Greene fall in line, or will they complicate the Republican agenda and getting a new Speaker in January? Guys.
All right, Mani Raju live for us on the steps of the Capitol. Thank you so much for that report. Let's discuss now with CNN's Jeff Zeleny and David Chalian. Just to be clear, though, he didn't fully pass the Biden-Harris agenda. In fact, he helped sink a key part of it, which was the bipartisan immigration deal that was struck in the Senate with Joe Biden to effectively help Donald Trump on that issue. I just think we should say credit where credit is due, Marjorie Taylor Greene. But let's talk about, this is a key moment, and we've seen this coming, David, but now it is here that Republicans are also controlling the House.
Yeah, the trifecta is official. The presidency, the House, the Senate. It is common in American history that when a new president comes in, they do have both chambers. That's not an uncommon thing. We see them try to utilize that to get through their big ticket agenda items in those first 2 years before perhaps a midterm election may deliver another result. Now, this majority for the Republicans is going to be narrow. You just noted we got to this by projecting 2 more races. That gets them to 218. There are 9 outstanding races right now, 4 of which Republicans currently hold the lead in. But not clear that those leads are all going to hold. But let's say even most of them do. You're talking about a majority here of 221, 222, probably at the maximum. In fact, there was a great moment, I don't know if you saw this morning with President Trump when he was talking to House Republicans. He walks in, he takes the stage, he looks to the leadership team and says, what are you guys, +4, +5? And like the leadership team was like, like it was kind of in response. They weren't, that +4, +5 may be wishful thinking here, given where we are in these outstanding races, but the trifecta is here. This is a Republican Party, including up on Capitol Hill, much more in Donald Trump's image than the Republican Party he found in 2017. There's no doubt about that. But as you just heard from Marjorie Taylor Greene, when the margins are this narrow in the House, every voice matters.
And as we saw in the last Congress, Jeff, that can have discombobulating effects for the efficiency of the House.
Absolutely. Discombobulating is probably a good word. Look, I mean, it's a much narrower majority than the presidential result indicates. I mean, I think if you were just to look at that, you would think that Republicans would have done better in some places. But Democrats were pretty confident going into this. Hakeem Jeffries never said it, but a lot of Democrats thought he would be the House Speaker. That is not the case. But we are seeing a dramatic difference. The sea change, you can feel it in Washington with the former president meeting with the current president of the White House today, the leadership vote on the Senate side coming up on the House side. This is Donald Trump's Washington. There's no doubt about it. However, David, I think, made a good point for 2 years. I mean, that's all that happens at one point, and the House is so on a razor's edge that could certainly change in the second half of the Trump term.
The narrow majority last term was such a headache for the Speaker.
Which Speaker?
Well, right? We saw that mess. We saw that mess. However, when they control the White House and both chambers, is it going to be a little bit of a different story? Is it easier for Trump to kind of crack the whip and get people in line in the House?
A quick answer, yes, absolutely. There's no doubt with one-party rule, especially when it's in the image of Trump, as you said, I think it's much easier.
Yeah, I also think who's in charge matters. And you just saw John Thune, newly elected as Senate Majority Leader, come out and detail multiple times how it's important to pursue Donald Trump's agenda, Donald Trump's agenda, Donald Trump's agenda again and again. I wonder, as some of the MAGA acolytes down in Mar-a-Lago sort of express some apprehension about him as leader, if there is a place for him to perhaps be a guardrail, as we've described in the past, towards some of Trump's more extreme ambitions.
Well, you also saw John Thune's leadership team that was elected around him, including Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma. You mentioned the immigration bill that had a bipartisan. He was the leader on the Republican side of that bipartisan effort that Trump scuttled. But there he was today in this leadership team pledging that Donald Trump's agenda is going to be their agenda to get through.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. God bless you guys for tuning in. Double tap your screen. Double tap your screen. Let's get the likes up and subscribe to the channel. Okay, here is the breaking news right here.
We got a lot of news breaking right now, folks. This one is the latest. President-elect Trump has nominated former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard to be the next Director of National Intelligence. DNI is the shorthand for that role. She is a former Democrat. She supported President Trump and became a Republican over the course of this election. She's a lieutenant colonel in the military, and she was very
Tulsi Gabbard has been nominated by the legendary 47th President-elect Donald J. Trump to be the Director of National Intelligence. And some people are saying, what is the Director of National Intelligence? What do they do? The Director of National Intelligence serves as the head of the U.S. intelligence community, overseeing and directing the implementation of the national intelligence program and acting as the principal advisor to the president. Okay, the National Security Council and the Homeland Security Council for Intelligence Matters. So Tulsi will be in charge of all of this stuff. And to some extent, some part of Homeland Security Council for Intelligence Matters. Okay? So Tulsi has always been a favorite of mine. I always call Tulsi Gabbard Wonder Woman. She's been like a huge contributor to the Trump's campaign and also to just Trump being the 47th. Okay. I was patiently waiting for Tulsi Gabbard, which now we know she's gonna be the national she's gonna be the Director of National Intelligence. And RFK is the next person everybody's waiting for. We are waiting for RFK Jr., Bobby for sure, Bobby Kennedy. Everybody's waiting for what will Bobby be named as or nominated as? Okay, what will he be nominated as? We already know Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will be Doge, Director of Government Efficiency. So these are interesting times, man. Shout out to Tulsi Gabbard. God bless you, Tulsi Gabbard. This is amazing, guys. This is so amazing.
over the course of this election. She's a lieutenant colonel in the military, and she was very omnipresent along the election campaign. You see images of her here with President-elect Trump.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Tulsi, let me just keep this screen on Tulsi, okay? Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, this right here is a definition of I got the last laugh. This right here is the definition of Tulsi got the last laugh. Remember when Tulsi and Kamala Harris had to go head to head to be nominated as the Democratic presidential nominee, and they both lost, and Joe Biden won that nomination. But just think about this: years later, Kamala became the vice president for Joe Biden. Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party. She joined the winning party, which was the Republican Party, which is the party of the legend, the Don, the king of deal making, the 47th, and was the 45th, Donald J. Trump. And now she's being named as the Director of National Intelligence. This is what happens when you are patient and you never break your rules. You never compromise your beliefs for anybody. Tulsi Gabbard got the last laugh, people. Now Kamala is gonna go out of uh, government official work, which was the vice president of the United States, and now Tulsi's being ushered in to be the director of national intelligence. Man, double tap your screen, man. Let's get this subscription up. Let's like the live stream. Double tap the video, double tap your phone, and you know what time it is, man. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. Believe in God. Okay? No matter what you're going through, I know times are hard right now. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams, guys. I love you guys. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you to the viewers. Thank you to the veterans in the chat. God bless you guys. Genesis is signing out. I love you guys.